Think about this. Your father is the first person in the outside world that either chooses you or doesn't, and it's the answer to that question that will inevitably shape you and everyone around you for the rest of your life and theirs.
On the surface, if you just take snapshots of Western culture right now, the prognosis is not good.
Well, what my mom has told me, he left when I was 1.
I remember the day I lost all respect for my father, and I was 16 years old, and I saw him doing lines of cocaine, and he did it right in front of me.
Say, you know, please, Dad, help me, do something, and he would just shake his head and shrug his shoulders and do nothing.
So many men who were never fathered themselves, for example, they really don't know how to do it energetically. Do you understand?
Yeah, he just left. He didn't even say why, or the last thing I remember was that him and my mom were having an argument, and then from there on I don't remember anything.
He molested me. He was always locked up in the penitentiary. He was never around to help my mother.
My father was never there.
I think there's cultural angst, if you will, in the fact that there's this innate understanding that this is not the way it should be.
They shot him when I was in my mom's stomach. They killed him at gunpoint. So I don't have a dad.
In the beginning, I can't remember any moments with him because he wasn't there. So.
Because he wasn't like never there for me, you know what I mean? You know, he never told me about the streets, you know what I mean? He wasn't no father.
I can't think of a man or woman in the jail that I worked with over 14 years that had a good father. I mean, it's just universal.
The one person, the one man in my life that's supposed to be my #1 role model, you know, was a loser.
Now, this won't fix itself. It'll get worse and worse, and until we realize what's at the root, right? And the root's fatherlessness. Every man has one question, one, that they're asking. Do I have what it takes? Right? Am I powerful? Am I real? Can I come through? That is the core question of the masculine journey. I mean, that shapes and drives everything a man is and says and does. Do I have what it takes? And the boy is supposed to get the answer to the question from his father.
John Eldredge is the author of the faith-based book and video curriculum Wild at Heart, which to date has sold close to 4 million copies. Eldridge's approach is to get men to understand that nearly everyone has a wound created by their father. Now that wound, which remains open and tender to millions of men worldwide, is the direct result of the one question being asked, am I good enough? And the answer consisting of silence.
It is normal right now in the culture in the West for boys, young men, and even grown men now to experience life without fathering. It's like he walks around with a question mark on his chest for the rest of his life, and he's looking for the validation, right, in 100 places. You know, he looks to the woman. Tell me who I am as a man, right? In so many other ways. So that, the father wound comes when the boy doesn't receive the affection, and he doesn't receive the affirmation or the validation that he needs to become confident and secure, right, and selfless man.
We seek our approval. We know Mother loves us, but approval we want from our Father.
Now, he doesn't get that from his father. He gets a very profound wound, either through silence, right? Dad's just not there, he's not present, he's checked out, he doesn't tell him who he is, right? Or he hears terrible things. No, right? You're an effing idiot, right? I mean, all the things that boys hear from their fathers, the physical abuse, the violence, the rage, that is a profound wounding. He doesn't get love. He ends up being a very insecure man. He ends up either trying to get love in 1,000 ways, right? Sex, money, people liking me, right? Success, being great at sports, something like that, right? He's looking for love, a father love.
When that securing, validating, grounding presence isn't in a young person's life, I think they're just loose cannons sort of flailing around for identity and significance and importance.
Father Richard Rohr is the author of dozens of books, including the groundbreaking publication Wild Man to Wise Man, originally released in 1990. Rohr is one of the first authors to really explore that idea that a father is the first person in the outside world to either choose us or not. It's that decision that incidentally affects us for the remainder of our lives. It's also a wound that he says can be found everywhere.
And I've preached on all continents now. I've been in so many countries. I think it's the most universal wound on this earth.
Any author that is out there that writes about this will tell you that it is by far the exception that a child is not wounded by the parents in some way.
So boy or girl, right, the father's been given this incredibly powerful role to bestow a blessing, an identity, a confidence, an assurance, a settledness in the soul, right? And I mean, you walk into any psychologist's office in the world, and 9 times out of 10, the root issue in the presenting problems, whatever they are, the addictions, the affairs, the depression, it's a father wound.
This is the progression. A father creates a wound by his absence, his lack of engagement, and from that, vows are made, a set of rules that we live by, a subconscious code on which we base every decision. Vows are constructed with terms such as I will always or I will never. The danger in those vows lies in how we take them to others in our lives and how these absolutes never allow us a life of true freedom.
It gives us the lens that we look at life through, and that vow typically looks like I will never be poor, or I will always be skinny, or I will never be laughed at, or I will never be hurt again, or to the extreme, depend on how the child's heart was handled, is I'll never be a man, or I'll never be beautiful.
He was just never there. He was never there, period. If I have a child, I would always be there for them. I don't care hell or high water if I was overseas or not. I mean, I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't have to think about it. I mean, if I have to kill somebody to get to my son, I would I would kill to go see my son.
Watch and listen now as you hear the end result of a father wound come to life in the vows of these few who represent the many.
I've come to the realization that if he doesn't want me in his life, then there's no need for me to be. I've made the promise to myself that I would never repeat what my father did to me and to my sisters and to my mother.
And then he would constantly tell me that I was gonna, that I inherited the fat gene and that I was gonna blow up like my mom and be a big fat blimp. Yeah, when and if I ever do have children, I would never make them feel the way he made me feel. I definitely vow to that, or never have them see me do the things that he's done.
To be honest, he's missed out on a lot. Now he asks me how am I doing in school, and I just tell him great. But in reality, I'm not doing so good. When I have children, doesn't matter how many, I'm going to treat them all the same, regardless if it's a boy, girl, race, doesn't matter. They're my children, I decided to bring them to this world. I'm going to take care of them.
I was still very hurt. I was mad and I was hurt and I was angry. But more than anything, I wanted to show him that I didn't need him. And that was when I just felt so alone and so abandoned that I don't know, it's like I vowed I would never trust anyone. And then, life began. I had to do it by myself, and I did.
You're only going to hit me hard once. But when my mom and dad died, that was the hardest hit I've ever took. There's a good Johnny and there's a bad Johnny. I want to stay with the good Johnny. I want to be happy. I want to get on a horse and take off. I want to wrestle with my kids. But when the depression kicks in, don't matter what comes by me, I'm gonna hurt you. And it's awful, because that's not really me.
In the West today, you can almost assume that people carry two wounds. A wound in relationship to authority, because we've had so much bad authority in church and state, and a wound in regard to sexuality.
When you try and teach your young people that there are no essential differences between men and women, that brings chaos into the whole social fabric. You take away the nobility and the beauty and the dignity of gender differences, right? You take that away and then you try and get men and women to be good men and women. It won't happen.
In essence, what both Rohr and Eldridge are referring to is the notion that boys will be boys. If they're not allowed to be, the damage can be devastating.
Earlier cultures understood that there's a warrior in the heart of a boy, right? And you take that and you shape it to be good, right? To serve others, right? To serve what is right and noble, right? But you don't tell them it's bad. You don't just take it away, and so we don't let Timmy play with guns, right? We don't want our sons doing that. No, don't play army. Don't do any of that stuff. Absolutely emasculating. Are you kidding me? Of course your kid's going to play with guns, right? The little boy's wired for it. He's going to make it out of graham crackers or sticks, right? I mean, my sons turn every broom into a sword, right? Or a bazooka or something like that. It is so deep in the heart of a boy to be the warrior. To tell them that aggression's bad, that's all bad. It's profoundly emasculating. Boys are wired for adventure, and boys are wired for aggression. And aggression is good. I mean, you want a boy to stand up as a man to apartheid, right? You want him to stand up to injustice, then he has to have something in him that's learned that there are good forms of aggression.
For boys, it's the scraped knees and the dirty fingernails and the backyard battles that are the beginnings of an invitation. When those things are removed, what's left is what Wildman founder Mark Garcia calls the scripted life.
Someone hands you a script, either psychologically or emotionally or verbally, through an upbringing, and because you are susceptible typically in those adolescent years, you absorb that script. Men and women end up going into professions they had that was not on their heart. They end up taking on behaviors that was not who they are. They end up speaking certain ways because of the way that was imposed on them. The scripted life is what life is done to them, to us, and it is not necessarily who we are.
According to Eldridge, another danger in not allowing that natural aggression in boys, which is often stifled because of an absent father, is how it affects the boys once they step into the world of men.
When men go bad, they either go passive or they go violent. Those are pretty much the two options, and there's a culturally acceptable violent. We call it drivenness, we call it success, right? The guy who's just gone in his world, making it happen, or this passivity, just checked out. And you know what? There's a lot of the culture that likes that likes a very nice man, just a very sweet man. But then we wonder, how come his wife leaves him, right? Why are his kids going nuts, Well, because he's completely checked out. He's not a good man, but he's sweet.
There's something about gratuitous choice. My mom has to love me, but when my dad loves me, that is unbelievably validating to the little girl. Now to the little boy too, but to the little girl, this tells me I really am okay. Now when she doesn't get that, of course, her need for male attention is just bottomless.
Just as aggression is a natural, healthy outlet for boys to discover their worth, the role of a father is just as pivotal for a little girl. It's not strength or bravery that she's needing to confirm, but value and beauty. And that can come from only one person.
Now what's fascinating is every little girl has a question, but it's a different question. And the question goes something like, do you delight in me? Am I worth fighting for? Do you see me? Do you value me? Am I known and am I wanted? But she takes that question to her dad as well.
That's it. It's pretty simple questions. And if the father does not answer that question for the daughter, she takes that out and seeks that. Am I lovely? Am I valuable? Can you see me?
The number one predictor of sexual promiscuity in teenage girls is no dad. Because she's now looking in boys to get that father love, to get that validation, that affirmation that she needed from a father.
And I'm convinced this is true. Like the prostitutes I worked with at the jail, none of them had good fathers, as I said before. When a father, appropriately loves, validates, touches, affirms his little girl, she just doesn't need to run off with the first boy at 14.
I feel that if I have sex, that they're gonna like me more.
Beginning about 70 years ago, a mass migration of men from their households began, and the trend has increased in numbers since. For example, it's been said that during World War II, around 16 million soldiers were engaged in battle. Most of them were men. Nearly 1 million died. That left a gaping wound in the role of fathering. Upon their return, several different outcomes were realized. One, due to the psychological toll of the war, many men were emotionally detached from their children. Another happened as America recovered.
In the West, largely because of the Industrial Revolution, the father goes away. And he spends most of his working hours, and therefore most of his energy, most of his mental focus, and he spends himself out there in the world. And what the kids get when he gets home is the leftovers.
What seemed to have been the case with a lot of World War II fathers, or even the first part of last century, is just that they didn't think they were supposed to have any part in child rearing. That was a mother's role. So they just withdrew, and you won't have so much the abusive father as just the emotionally unavailable father, the father who took no interest in my life.
And what good fathers did at this time was they were the breadwinners. They could be a moral guide, but they were mostly a breadwinner. That's what they did. And so a really good father at this time, you know, he had a reason not to be engaged in the day-to-day activities with his children, because the idea at the time was that he really should not. The mother should be doing that.
Western culture shifted away from being an agrarian society where 2 and 3 generations lived in the same household for multiple generations, where father worked alongside his son, and son, even along with the grandfather, could see how what manhood looked like. But when the Industrial Revolution came along and fathers were leaving and mothers were left to take care of the children, the fathers were basically present but absent. And so the interaction between father and son and father and daughter diminished.
As the lack of father interest increased, so did some other alarming figures. For example, between 1900 and 1960, the number of children in single-parent households rose by less than a point. Over the next 40 years, divorces skyrocketed, climbing over 40%, leaving half of America's children without a father around. Today, in the African American community, it's an alarming 65% chance that no father lives in the home. Those numbers continue to climb. Incidentally, so do the numbers of teen pregnancies, high school dropout rates, and unwed teen mothers. Between 1960 and 1992, juvenile crime increased 6-fold in our country. Teen suicides tripled. Consider this. In a study conducted in 1985, it is said that of the nearly 50% of fathers involved in a divorce, 42% of those men will never see their children again, leaving tens of millions of children with little to absolutely no positive male influence in their lives, and alone to find their way through another phase that's relatively new to American culture, adolescence.
People don't want to grow up. You see, we have an adolescent culture now.
Reviewing history, the term, or at least the philosophy behind adolescence, didn't really exist in the American culture until the early to mid-20th century. Children went to school and then worked at home, on the farm, or in the stores with their parents, earning to help the family. But when the leader of the household began his slow descent into distance, children were left to figure out what being an adult was all about, on their own. And what was once a transitional period between the ages of 13 and 17 into adulthood has now turned into a perpetual childhood.
You have this world where people worship youth, right? We worship the young, the good-looking, the healthy, the ripped, right? The hard-body, the beautiful, right? We have an adolescent culture. It's like a culture in perpetual high school. We're not inviting, in particular, boys to become men. We're allowing this prolonged Peter Pan period, this syndrome, right, to go on for, oh my goodness, I mean, it starts, 9, 10, 11 years old, and we're allowing it to go into the 30s.
As culture cultivates a more and more seemingly individualistic society, full of constant status updates and tweets, so too seems to grow the gap between what was considered a man 3 or 4 generations ago and what is wandering our streets, our neighborhoods, our workplaces today.
Boys in Wall Street, right, wearing men's suits, making men's decisions, but acting like boys. And then all the way down through culture like that. So economically, it's shaking us. In the family, it's shaking us.
We've got to concentrate on raising up mature middle-aged men so that they can then, in the next generation, create, now some of our men are already doing it, create rites of passage for boys between 13 and 17, which was the classic period for initiation.
Initiation, defined as any important act or event marking the passage from one stage of life into another, the invitation into a club, In this case, being invited from childhood into manhood, an element missing from modern culture. Globally, other cultures understood the importance of that invitation. Some still practice the rites of passage that bring a boy into the realm of men. Today, domestically and in a majority of other nations, that invitation is never clearly administered. Boys are left wondering where they fit, what their role is, and they find themselves on a perpetual quest for validation.
And you have all these guys walking around that they're clueless. I don't know what it means to be a man. I doubt very much I am a man. And so I'm going to play the man, right? I'm not stepping up. There's a lot of posing of, yeah, I've got a strength. I'm the real deal. Look at me. I'm something. Most of it is charades. It's a fake. It's a mask, right? Because you get inside that guy and he's terrified. You know, he'll play the man, right, down in the hockey arena. But how come he won't talk to his 18-year-old daughter, right? He'll play the man, right, at work. And, I mean, he'll shut guys down, fire people. I mean, right? He seems like, whoa, a pillar of strength. But how come he's abusive to his wife?
Coincidentally, women have something that men don't, which is a natural invitation, an organic initiation into adulthood. It's culturally and universally understood that when a girl has her first menstrual cycle, she's made that transition into a young woman. Boys, however, lack that call to action, that clear change. Without it, most spend their lives searching for someone to invite them into the fraternity of men.
Until the father sets up a forum or a series of challenges in a young man's life to move him into a manhood where he feels like he has what it takes, the man will go into adulthood wondering, do I have what it takes? And live his life out of his false self.
Everybody's dealt a hand coming into this world. But what happens for that little boy and that little girl next is what makes the difference. And by next, I mean their dad. The amount of his engagement, the amount of his love, the amount of his attention, physical affection, and I mean appropriate, hugs, right, kisses, I like to be with you, wrestling, right, spending time together, hanging out on the couch, and then showing his children the way. The amount of engagement of a father, it almost makes the hand you're dealt insignificant. That's how powerful it is.
Consider the impact of an absent father. The U.S. Census Bureau says that 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. One study showed that up to 90% of suicidal teenagers felt that their families either ignored or rejected them. Between 1950 and 2000, the number of unwed teen mothers rose from 10% to just under 80. 71% of all high school dropouts come from a fatherless home. And furthermore, a collection of other probabilities for you.
Not having a father, it's like, I need someone to look up to. I see some of my friends, their parents are, they're wealthy and they look up to the dad for stuff, But I can't do that because I don't have a father.
It is a difficult world to navigate, even with the guidance and support of a father. But for these teenagers from an inner-city high school in Miami, the absence of their paternal leader, mentor, and teacher only made the road that much harder.
Like, I go to classes and I hear, oh, my dad this and my dad that, and I was always, I felt kind of like the oddball because I was like, wow, my dad, I don't know who my dad is. So it was like, wow, it's crazy, you don't think about, that when you're a kid, but it isn't until like you probably get to like maybe middle school when you start to notice, your dad isn't really here.
Some kids always look for their dad to help them play sports or anything, and most don't have a dad, so they're like, do anything crazy, like run the streets, rob people, get in trouble, go to jail.
And I just remember all the kids telling stories of their dads as we were making these cards. They would say, oh yeah, I remember that time that my dad picked me up and we went to go for ice cream and I just missed a whole day of school. And I was like, I never had that.
My mother was there, but she had to work so much to support us. So it was like we was always with my aunt or my grandmother all the time. And my mom, we would see my mom, but it was like, hey baby, hi baby, I gotta go to work. Like that, I have to leave, I have to support this family. It's just me.
Without the father figure around or even present but absent, these teenagers prove a perfect case in the need for that male guidance. It also highlights the pressure that absence can place in other areas of the family. That's not to say that a mother can't do the job. It's, as you heard before, the need for the father's approval and the invitation, the validation that you, my child, are ready for this world. When that isn't given, a young man or young woman is simply left to wonder.
You don't think about it, but it isn't until you get older and older you start to ask yourself, why wasn't dad there? It's just that emptiness. And not just, it's okay to have a mother figure, but when your father figure isn't there, it hurts. Because it's like, who do you turn to?
It's not an angry type of feeling, but it's more like a jealousy. Like knowing that, okay, he could be with his dad. I care. They go out, I stay home, doing nothing. They're out with their family or pretty much their dad, and I'm just home. And then if I go out with my friends and they go out with their dad, it's like, okay, isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing with my dad?
And everyone would come with their mother and their father, and with me would just be my mother and maybe my aunt. And I was like, I have two mommies, but not like that. I have an aunt that substitutes as a mother, and I have a mother, biological mother, but no father.
And I used to feel like he disowned me, like he never wanted me to be a part of his life, because he had a younger son who he lived with, who he loved and cared for. And when I was younger, that affected me.
You're basically scarred. You're scarred for life. I mean, you don't have someone to turn to aside from your mom. And, sometimes you want to have, there's some things you feel comfortable talking to your mom, but, it doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like when you have a father figure, you can talk to him about everything and anything. From women to, TV, anything.
Amongst the friends that you have, I mean, how many of the kids that you know are struggling with this same problem, that their dads weren't there?
Wow, I think almost everybody I know.
Really?
Almost everybody I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Don King Productions and St. Ides welcomes you to our featured bout of the evening here at the pit in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I got into boxing at the age in 76, I'm sorry. In 1976, I got into boxing and said, you know what, I would never do drugs. Look at the way it is, it's stupid. I want to show my kids something that they didn't show me.
With 42 wins, no losses, 2 draws with 24 wins coming by way of knockout. Tonight, he celebrates his birthday by defending his title for the 13th time. Here is the undefeated IBF and WBO Junior Bantamweight Champion of the world, introducing the baby face assassin. Here is Johnny.
Truth is that I got a broken heart, and I don't think it'll ever be fixed. And the reason why I tell you the truth is because I want to help others. But I'm pretty tore up from the floor up.
Tapia hitting on the break.
Tapia forgets about boxing and gets into fights. I mean, the street violence of his just takes over.
My grandfather is the one that raised me. But he had to also raise other 8 boys, 6 girls. You know, my family's very rough. Yeah. Got a brother did 19 years, other brother did 12. And I never wanted to go to prison myself.
Fighting with a sense of urgency here. The accidental headbutt occurred a minute 30 into round 1. We'll take a look closely at it between rounds as the crowd chants in unison for Tapia.
Well, you know, I was raised in Walls Park Community Center, and that's where everything went. You know, how to play basketball, how to play football. I mean, I was never taught. I had to learn. But what I wish that I would have learned is how to be as rough that he was, because that's the only way you got your point across. And I'm not that kind of person unless you put me in the ring or unless you hit me. Well, then there's a different Johnny.
Almost a low blow, and there's the answer by Tapia. He said, you do it, I'll do it back.
And he did it. He didn't hesitate. I like that. Sounds odd, but I like that.
And here comes Tapia.
I had hugs, I had holds, but I wanted that mother and father relationship. And my wife does that with my kids, and I cut it off and make her do that with me. So my wife's like my wife, my best friend, my mother. I still treat her like she's my mom.
On Johnny Tapia's trunks, he's got Mi Vida Loca written, which is my crazy life.
And boy, he's had just that, and he comes on strong here.
Johnny Tapia's speed is just too much for Blanco, Steve.
And it's how she died, and it's how they did her. Really killed me, and I'll never recover from it. Truth is, and the fact is that I miss my mom and dad, and I'll probably die that way, and that I know for a fact.
In the spring of 1975, Johnny Tapia is 8 years old. His mother, Virginia, along with her parents, were raising Johnny. His father is gone, murdered while his mother was pregnant. She is his lifeline and the light of his life. Then in May, that light was extinguished. After a night of partying with some friends, Virginia did not come home. Johnny had begged his mother not to go out, and he had stayed up all night, waiting for her. He claims that, in the early morning hours, he saw a pickup truck cruise slowly outside his bedroom window, his mother fighting with 2 men inside. It then sped away. According to his book, Mi Vida Loca, Virginia was taken to a remote location where she was stabbed multiple times and beaten with pipes and rocks. She survived that attack and was taken to the hospital by a construction worker who had found her. For 2 days she sat in the hospital, unidentified, her family still wondering where she might be. On the 2nd day of her stay, a man, later identified as her killer, snuck into her hospital room and struck her in the head several times. He was gone before anyone had noticed that he was there, and Virginia died later that day.
That's what really kills me the most, is that, they stabbed her 22 times and raped her, and then they drugged her 100 miles. But before they did it, they brought her to my grandma's house, and I was seeing her changed up in back of the truck. I could never get that picture out of my mind. I wanted to kill this guy. I was going to stab the shit out of him, and I didn't care what happened.
From that moment on, Johnny erected a tower of rage inside himself from which he would strike at anyone and everyone who crossed his path, and even more so anyone who dare step in the ring with him. But the truth was, on the inside, his spirit was crushed.
You know, it was an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I wanted him back. And I don't know if revenge was the call, if it helped out any, but I just wanted somebody to love me, hold me, take care of me. Just tell me I'm okay. I did everything bad to say that I was all right, instead of doing everything good and accept the glory and the fame.
The glory and the fame came from a boxing career that consisted of 6 world titles, an undefeated record that spanned over 12 years, and fighting for the likes of promoter Don King on networks such as Showtime. But the hundreds of thousands of adoring fans and million-dollar paychecks still did not fill the void left by his parents' deaths. So Johnny turned to the comfort that had never let him down: drugs. As his notoriety grew in the ring, it grew outside the ring as well. His victories in the ring were becoming overshadowed by his failures outside. Attempted suicides, drug overdoses, and criminal convictions were starting to pile up quicker than knockouts, and the champ admits that it all could have been different.
I just want somebody to say that I'm gonna make it. I don't have to do those crazy stuff, you know. I don't have to shoot nobody or stab nobody, or I've been doing everything in the wrong way. And I'm tired. I'm really beat down. I'm missing love and affection. Would I ever get it? I don't know, but
Would you trade all of your belts for that?
in a heartbeat, my belts don't mean nothing to me. Well, I got 6 world titles. I got a total of 9. I broke every record in the history of boxing as being a natural fighter. What I really need to do is quit coke and become a bigger and better father and a husband. That's what I really need.
We interviewed Johnny in June of 2009. He had served 40 days in jail for a parole violation and was, at that point, in rehab for what he told us was the 18th time. This interview took place 1 week before he was released.
Boxer Johnny Tapia is back in jail tonight. The former world champ went to Red River this past weekend to help family members with their search for his cousin, Arthur Chavez, who went missing there last month. But according to probation and parole, Tapia never got permission for the trip from his probation officer and went into a bar while in Red River. Both are parole violations. Tapia was arrested in Albuquerque this morning for the violations. His family disputes the charges, though, saying Tapia did request permission, and they have videotape showing he never entered a bar. Probation and parole says it will now hold hearings to determine if Tapia should face punishment. Tapia was on probation after serving prison time. Earlier, he was caught with cocaine while on probation.
During the filming of this documentary, we visited 2 cities with the intent of talking to prostitutes, Albuquerque and Las Vegas. While the intent simply was to discuss their relationships with their fathers, the level of reluctancy was high, and the reasoning was very similar. None cared enough of their fathers to even speak of them. The ones that did, a woman in the adult entertainment industry and 2 that actually worked the streets, all had the same story.
I never felt loved with him, though.
What about now?
I still don't feel it. Never felt it.
Ginger is a woman who has worked in the adult entertainment industry of Las Vegas since she was a teenager. She says that from the time she was a child, her father never gave her the validation that she was starving for. On the contrary, he would insult her and her mother, and that sent Ginger running towards whatever or whoever would embrace her and answer the question that her heart kept asking. The whatever turned out to be X-rated dancing and beyond. The whoever was a sea of nameless faces that stretched over 2 decades for Ginger, all men that were putrid reminders of her father and a classic example of a wounded person wounding others.
I had that need to feel loved or accepted or whatever, and he felt like he was pushing me away a lot by telling me I wasn't his, and just some of the mean stuff that he would say to me. That's probably why I went on to be in these relationships that were very self-destructive, and with men that were a lot older than me, and trying to fill some void that I had, but yet just wasn't working. I knew that he didn't like that, and so it was. I kind of did it in a way to make him think, you know, because he used to say negative stuff about me being, you know, a slut or this or that, and so I thought, well, you know, you think of me this way, so, you know, I might as well go out and do it and make money doing it. Because I lost respect for him as a man and as a human being and person, I would look at those guys in disgust, and I would have no respect for them. And the only way that, and I would feel just compelled to want to take all their money.
Ginger, who now works the call center for an escort service, also admits that over the years of being in this business, that a vast majority of the girls that she's seen have come from a similar relationship with their fathers. They come to this industry rationalizing their involvement behind the mask of making money, but they're really looking for love and acceptance. And unfortunately, what they often get is a dose of rejection that's even more potent than the ones that they received at home.
And they would get hooked up with these guys, and these guys would be like, go out there and, I don't care what you got to do, just bring me home money. And if they didn't make the money, they would come to work the next day all beat up with bruises on them and everything else.
On the streets of Albuquerque, the situation was a little different. The two women that agreed to speak to us were walking the streets trying to earn money when we approached them. Both charged us for our time, $20 to speak for 5 minutes. So the lighting and composition may be lacking, but the words that they have to say are utterly authentic. The first is 42-year-old Anaya. For 20 years, she's been walking the streets and admits that it all started because of the poor relationship that she had with her father. She also confessed that there is a pain that she's running from and a comforting remedy that is easy to come by.
We just didn't get along as we was growing up. We just didn't like me. That's what I think.
He didn't like you?
No. He just, we stayed in the same house, but, we never had no relationship.
Wait, why are you doing this?
Because I'm lonely and hurt. I've been hurt by men. When I get high or drink, it just takes away the pain. But then when it wears off, it's like there again. I don't think about it when I'm drinking or getting high. I don't, you know what I'm saying?
It's just burying it.
Yeah.
Do you think that you're looking for that with the men, or is being...
I think I'm looking for love with men. You know what I'm saying?
When asked if her father's absence bothered her, the response was immediate.
No, it don't bother me. It's just like, I don't have no feelings for him. Like he told me, he said if something happened to me, it won't be no love loss. I think a father and daughter should be close. I should be able to go with him about anything, talk to him about anything, you know what I'm saying? But I wouldn't even know how to talk to him, you know what I mean? It's been like, we don't have no type of communication or relationship, so you know what I mean? It'll be hard to be like I'm talking to you, like for the first time. That's how I mean, he's my father, you're not even my father. I talk to you more right now than I ever talk to him.
The second woman is 33-year-old Valerie. She says her father molested her and is now in prison for molesting others. For 10 years, she's been walking the streets and admits it's mostly in an effort to deaden the pain one way or another. Why do you do it?
One, because addiction. Two, because I have addiction because I try to cover up all the hurt, the pain, the anger.
So you're looking for something. What are you looking for in the drugs?
Just to numb me from everything.
When asked what she thinks about every day as she prepares to walk the streets, she became visibly uncomfortable. When asked what a good dad would have meant to her, she became visibly human.
I really don't think. I don't think of it. I don't stop and think about it. Like things I need. Really. Excuse me. Things I need, like clothes, hygiene, a roof over my head.
And the drugs?
And the drugs, yeah.
If you had a good dad, Valerie, what do you think the difference would be in your life?
That I'd be a mother to my kids now. That I'd be able to raise my kids now. Around here, I know what's going on about the females that are on the west side. I know a lot of them. I've been around where they've seen those people. Excuse me, that they found dead on Pennsylvania. Those two females that married.
Yeah.
I'm pretty close to getting hurt myself.
Time to quit.
It's about that time.
And would you care for I knew you?
It's been 4 months since police began unearthing human remains at a 100-acre dirt lot on the West Mesa. 7 of the 11 women have been identified. Just last Friday, police served a search warrant at an Albuquerque home, seizing evidence that may help them in their search for a suspect. About 100 detectives have been following up on local leads, as well as leads in a dozen other states.
Wisconsin is talking about a number of prostitutes that they've had killed over the period of the last 10 years.
Police are working without an effective tool used in past high-profile murder investigations, a large reward. Right now, the reward is only at $1,000. Chief Schultz thinks more cash could generate the one tip needed to crack the case.
Money does talk, and especially you have to look at the type of crime. Very often, in this type of case, very often we're dealing with a different element of society.
I think if you would have been more supporting in my life, I would have went in a different direction.
Halfway around the globe, the situation has deteriorated into much the same issue. Whether a teenager in Northern Ireland or an old Irish thrasher, both generations agree that things there are headed in the wrong direction.
I think it is a big problem because you would look up to your parents. No, your parents are brought you into the world and they're rearing you, and you're just thinking like, well, the only people who get through to you is your mother and father, so if they're talking to you, and people don't really have a mother or father, or they turn to you, they even talk to you, then you have nobody like.
Arthur Doherty is an 81-year-old Irish farmer who lost his father at the age of 3. He says things today in Europe are a far cry from what they used to be.
The young people's crazy now, as far as I can understand them. They're all now going to the town and all getting drunk and drugs. You wouldn't be safe on the road. Oh, they don't care either. A lot of them young parents now. They're socialising and going out to mothers and fathers now. Yeah. I see about them. I remember my mother, she would go to church on a Sunday and back in them necessary things with them, socialising. Well, if there were a concert, something in the parish hall, she would, no, they don't care either. A lot of them young parents now. They don't bother them. They'll go now and let children, maybe they'll get a babysitter, maybe they wouldn't. Sometimes you wouldn't. It's a different world altogether.
These teenagers from Londonderry say that the candle is burning at both ends. The kids aren't paying attention to their parents, and a lot of the parents aren't getting the job done for their kids.
I think some children are able to be really, really cheeky to them and can just, whatever they say, they do their own thing anyways, and they don't care what they think, and they do their own thing, and they really have no control over them.
Kids that don't have their dad my age, they don't have that guidance in their life, and they've got nobody to actually look up to as a parent or as a role model in their home or in their community. So they sort of go astray and they get into violence, crime, and they end up having a bad life. If all you do is turn on the news at the weekend and see somebody's got beat up or somebody's been stabbed or something, that's got to come from somewhere, and I put it down to the grassroots of parenting, or lack of parenting for that matter.
In an effort to help highlight the way that a father's wound can perpetuate itself from one generation to the next, consider the story of Andrea. Her father left her mother when Andrea was 9 and remarried. Andrea says the new woman in her father's life was not too keen on having kids around, and when Andrea looked to her father for support, it didn't come.
She would walk past me and she'd punch me, and then she'd cower as if I had done something to her. And one time she broke my arm, and every single time my dad, this is over a very short period of time, my dad took her side. I mean, I can remember sitting at the top of the stairs listening to my stepmom yell that she doesn't want me there, she hates me, he has to choose, it's me or the kids, it's me or the kids. And just hoping and hoping that he's gonna say, screw you, or whatever, but never. It was always, he chose her every single time.
Eventually, the situation in her father's home became too much for him to bear. 2 days before her 10th Christmas, Andrea was handed a plane ticket and sent away. Confused and rejected, she went to live with her mother, and when Andrea was 13, her mother died. She was now all alone.
Him and his wife flew over for the funeral. And I asked him after the funeral, I said, Dad, can I just spend some time with you by myself? And he turns, and I was sitting in the back of the car, and he turns and he looked at me and he said, wherever I go, my wife goes. And then she turns and looks at me and says, and I don't want you back in our house.
From that point on, Andrea made the decision, the vow, to never need anyone especially her father. But she admits that her level of self-worth had been demolished, and that is what led her to Billy.
You know, I met Billy when I was very young, 16, 17, and he was just the first male influence in my life. And I clung to that so desperately. I just wanted somebody to love me. I wanted the validation that I was good enough to come back to.
Now 18 and pregnant, Andrea thought that she had found the man to fill the void. She married Billy, and they had a daughter, Natalie. But not long after, and just as her father had done, Billy left. Alone again, and now with a baby girl to care for, Andrea opted for a new start, but not without a cost.
And I kept thinking, I'm doing to her what happened to me. I'm taking her away from her dad, and she's going to have those feelings that I had. She is going to wonder, why didn't he love me? And it was just so absolutely heart-wrenching.
Mother and daughter eventually found their way, and Andrea established a good home for them both. Andrea says Billy made attempts throughout the years to keep in contact with Natalie, but overall fell short as a father. Natalie continued to grow, and Andrea continued to struggle with the wound left by her father walking out the door.
Every relationship that I've had with a male figure from the time of my dad has answered the question that I'm not worth fighting for. And I think from the very first time that he didn't fight for me, that I just knew I wasn't worth it. And if the one person that is supposed to want to be there for me isn't, then why would somebody else? Someone that doesn't have that blood relationship, why would they? And you see it unfold. A wounded daughter seeking refuge in the love of another person, the wrong people, time and time again. Now a grown woman with a young girl, no father, and the wound gets handed on. I feared that Natalie would have that same hurt, and I did everything that I could to protect her, but there's some things you just can't protect your kids from. I mean, the absence of a father it's just a hole you can't fill. Now nearing adulthood, Natalie has struggles of her own. She admits that the absence of her father has caused her to seek that affection, that validation, in all of the wrong places. And she's compromised herself to find it.
I try so hard to make guys happy that I've managed to push everyone else out of my life. I mean, friends, like me and my mom, like no one is more important to me than some guy, the guy who, of the month, the week. No one is as important. At 17 years old, Natalie is well aware of what she's looking for in the boys, but still not finding. She admits to at least 7 sexual partners, and she knows that having a father around would have changed everything. It would have made all the difference. Like, first off, when you have a dad, someone to protect you, someone to want to meet every guy that you go out with, and lay down the law and be like, you respect my daughter and you don't do this or you don't do that. But I've never had that. And the way I look, I think that I'm pretty, but I don't feel wanted. I don't feel that anyone wants me besides my mom. I don't know how things will play out. Am I gonna have to hit rock bottom, or are things gonna have to get really bad before I realize, I don't want my life to be this way?
It's kind of hard to go back to the beginning and figure out exactly when I started to feel like there was something wrong with me and when I started to equate that feeling of something being wrong with me to being ugly.
Robin Decker is an award-winning fitness competitor and a model. She's been photographed, she's been interviewed, even painted. But it wasn't always that way. As a young girl, her parents divorced, and she divided her time between them. She says that her mother was a caring woman and always showed her love and affection, always attention. Unfortunately, so did her father.
He would tell me that I looked really good, in my pants or that I looked really sexy.
And you were how old?
The first time I remember hearing that, I was 9, but he had already been physically, sexually abusive towards me for, I don't really know how long. You know, and like putting a porno in to watch in front of me, because that's a good idea.
And you're how old at this point?
That happened between the ages of 9 and 10.
But it didn't stop there. Robin says she has several memories of sexual abuse by her father during her visits, things that immediately began to destroy and distort any chance that she had at a normal childhood.
I remember taking a shower with him, and I remember some sexual abuse happening there, and it was, you know, abuse is abuse.
Afraid to report the incidents to anyone, they continued. Meanwhile, Robin adopted a sad reality of what women were for, assuming that they were only objects to be used sexually. She found herself alienated from classmates and surrounded by older guys. Those guys were simply part of her quest for validation.
You know, the 18 to 24-year-old guys, that's all they were interested in was sex, and they didn't care how old I was. And that was the only acceptance that I found, was with the older guys. And the sex I related to love. And that's all I wanted. Love. That's it.
And when it was over, was it there?
No.
Boy after boy, Robin took her question out, trying to find the answer, and it never came. What did was one of the biggest surprises of her young life.
I had my son 3 weeks after my 14th birthday.
Now 14 and a mother, she finally reported the abuse to a school counselor, and she was removed from her father's home. But the damage had already been done. Over the next decade and a half, Robin would battle demons unlike anything she could have ever imagined. She had a second son at the age of 16, a third at the age of 19. She was constantly engaged in a war against weight, becoming more and more skinny. All of these things she now traces back to the wounds of a father.
I never got to be a girl. I never got to go through the things that you're supposed to go through growing up. I was like thrown into some sick version of womanhood. You make a connection between the ugliness that you feel inside and the image that you see in the mirror, and then you try and change that. Combined with, if I can't control what somebody puts into my body by way of sexual abuse, I will control what I put into my body by counting every calorie, every carbohydrate, every gram of fat.
A few years ago, she found sanctuary in the gym. She began to work out with a healthy goal in mind. She began eating properly, and she began to digest the idea that things were not her fault. Now, a well-known model, she admittedly still struggles with some of the emotional scar tissue. She's the mother of 4 sons, 2 of which she does not see. She also knows that much of this could have been different.
And I would have gone through none of that, I think, if I hadn't been trying so hard to find the love that I needed from this horrible man.
As we close Robin's story, we offer her an opportunity to speak directly to the little girl that she once was. What would she say to her? How would she help? What advice would she give to that little girl if she were sitting right next to her?
I would tell her not to search for her daddy's love everywhere. And that she has to somehow just believe that people love her. And that she's beautiful.
You know, I'd love to make the connection between this and war. I really would. I mean, why has so much of history been warlike and boys killing boys? We just so over-identify with this aggressive, attacking, fighting, abusing, killing. You know, I mean, we know for a fact Adolf Hitler was a physically abused boy by his father. Physically abused, you know? Where does all this need to abuse other people come from? Except some levels of abuse within ourselves.
My reality of my childhood was pretty normal. I thought it was a pretty normal childhood. I realize now, when I look back, our family was pretty insulated, very closed off, insular. There was a feeling that we were a little better because of our religion. Our religious belief was Christian Science, and the concept of Christian Science is you're using all of the God's power to heal you. You don't believe in doctors. You don't believe in dentists even. You don't believe in anything around health class or anything physical like that. You're learning every subject in the classroom. And, okay, get out your health books, and I would have to leave. My reality was that, you know, when you're standing in the hallway, you're in trouble, you know, and teachers are looking at you funny, and, you know, you're getting just getting the bad vibes from people. Yeah. And I'm out here because my parents told me a little speech to say about our religion and why. And I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it or understand it. So when people would say, you know, oh, this and that, and we believe this, and, you know, my dad would kind of roll his eyes and say, no, we don't believe in that. And, you know, when he would read from the Bible, he'd get teary-eyed, and it would be so emotional. And I would wonder why I don't get any of that. What's wrong with me? You know, am I supposed to be like him? Well, I wanted to learn about all things, and I wasn't really allowed to do that. Well, I think the wound was that I'm different than everybody else, and no one will ever understand what I'm thinking. And so that's one of those things that obviously have shown up in some lyrics.
Dear mother, dear father, what is this hell you've put me through? Believer, deceiver, day in, day out, live my life through you. Pushed onto me what's wrong or right, hidden from this thing that they call life.
My other belief about my family is it fell apart, it disintegrated, and I knew nothing about it. I didn't know it was happening, and I wasn't the man. I wasn't taught to step up and take control of the family and say, hey, wow, this is going on. The thing that hurt me most, and when I look back at it, I get really mad that my dad he left without saying goodbye. He left a note. He left a note, and it wasn't even to me. And I hated him for that. And I let him know.
Did you?
Yeah. And my sister couldn't believe how I was talking to my dad, you know? She's like, what are you doing? You're talking to him like that. It's like, I don't care. Right. You know, he screwed us. When my father left, I was 13. My mother passed away. I was 16. I blamed him for that. I blamed him for my mom passing away. Obviously, the Christian Science religion is you don't go to the doctor. Right. She died of a cancer that we watched her wither away, me and my sister. It was a big blur, all of that. Yeah. You know, all through high school. I went straight into the drinking, so I masked a lot of feelings of abandonment. Once the abandonment happened, and once I really got a deep anger for my father and my mother passed away, I had some couple of close friends that I was pretty close with, but not to the point where you could sit down and say, man, my mom died and I feel like this. You know, there was none of that. There was no funeral. There was no grieving part. That's another part of the religion that it didn't do well for me.
I see faith in your eyes. Never you hear the discouraging lies. I hear faith in your cries. Broken is the promise. Betrayal, the healing hand held back by the deepened nail. Follow the God that failed.
I feel so weird saying this, but I really tried to get close with him again, get back together, and I bought him a house so I could go visit him. And it's like, why did I do that? Why? You know, am I supposed to do that? You know, rockers, when they get money, they buy their parent the house they wanted. Yeah, we'd go hunting together. We'd do some things together, but it was never close. It was extremely surfacey, very surfacey. And I think I asked him one time, you know, why do you think Mom died? And he kind of jumped around the subject a bit. I told him what I thought. I thought she died because you left. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know you were the breadwinner. She didn't know how to work. She didn't know how to do anything. I mean, she was an artist. She could go and paint and do stuff like that, but to sustain your family on just that was tough. It didn't end great with my dad. He was sick. He had cancer as well. And it kind of went away. It just went away. I've gotten closure with my mom, going to her, I guess mausoleum you'd call it, and just asking her all kinds of questions. You know, why didn't you let us help you? This, all these things, all these questions that maybe I'll get the answer to later. I certainly started to close off the world and get very, very deep into music and let my feelings out through music. I would hear songs and understand that they're talking to me, they're communicating with me, they understand me. And that was where I started to connect to music deeply. My family fell apart, so I created my own family with the band. And then Cliff goes, and that was another extremely tough time.
Early Saturday morning, September 27th, 1986, on the road near Ljungby, Sweden, Cliff Burton died. He was 24 years old.
He just got thrown out the window and boom, the bus landed on him, and basically, by all accounts, I mean, he never woke up.
Drinkers we were. We went back to the hotel and just drank, you know.
I remember at 4 o'clock in the morning, I could hear James down on the street, drunk, screaming, Cliff, where are you? And when I heard that, I just broke into tears, you know.
Within hours, news of Cliff's death reached Metallica's fans in America.
I would say that Cliff passing didn't, well, yes, it really reopened that whole wound of abandonment, of anyone I'm kind of gonna get close to, you're just gonna leave. And it's better maybe to not put your heart out there. I see how I gathered up some of those tools and used them later on to, you know, the mighty Hetfield speaks or something, you know, stand back, don't get close, you know, I'm a rock, I'm immovable, you know, I've got no emotion. And that was the easy way to not get close to anybody. And yeah, I still struggle with that, you know, wanting to just stop the world. Okay, you get there, you know, the total control aspect of it. On stage was an easy persona to put on. It's a jacket that I could wear easily because of my past wounds. And I could get up there and play the victim and you know, back off, get away from me. And but when I took that off, it was still there. There's an integrity to part of that I believe, but most of it is the shield. It's the shield to keep people back.
I'll die if I let go. Control is love. Love is control. I will only let you breathe my air that you receive. Then we'll see if I let you love me.
I try to write about something and it morphs into this other thing. And that is the gift part that I believe. It's allowing me to get the stuff out that's still sitting in there. It's no good to you until you discover it yourself, you know? So sitting there, soapboxy, writing lyrics about, okay, your dad left and now do this for yourself and blah, blah, blah. No one's going to relate to that. They're going to want to relate to the struggle and know that there's someone out there helping speak about this. Wounds are good fodder for lyrics, man. They're a great thing to write about, and it's your story. You know, I'm getting to write my story, and people listening to it.
What do you think the most personal track is to you?
Unforgiven.
With time, the child draws in. This whipping boy done wrong, deprived of all his thoughts. The young man struggles on and on. No.
Our kids have no choice on how good a parent we're going to be. I'm going to be there because of what's happened in my past. I've had to learn how to love the family. I really have, because it didn't come easy. I fought it. I fought it for a while. I think once I started yelling at my kids and laying down the hammer, and I just, oh, whoa, that's what my dad would do. I got to stop that. And what really has helped me a lot with forgiving my dad or letting that go is just rewinding into his childhood and seeing he was raised on a farm with a bunch of women. You know, he didn't have a father figure. His dad wasn't around. I had to realize that the world does not revolve around James Hetfield, and that I get a lot more gratification out of hanging out with my family than I do with anybody else.
Big eyes to open soon, believing all under sun and moon. But does heaven know you're here? And did they give you smiles or tears? No, no tears.
Well, I always say I want to make it to Grandpa, where I can just sit there and have all the little ones run around and, oh yeah, Grandpa Het, how's it going? And, you know, and pull my finger, all that good stuff, you know. I definitely want that. I want to be the patriarch of the family and feel like I can be loved by them, and I can answer no matter how silly the question is, I'll take time to answer that. That's what I'd love to do to my kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, who knows. That's the love part of this world, and I want to see more of that.
Fathers have to take the time to work on themselves. In other words, you can only give away what you have become.
There is a profound movement among men who were themselves fatherless, at least emotionally, spiritually, if not most of them physically, who are rising up to become good men.
I realize that there is a movement of parents wanting to be there and be there with their kids.
Our awareness of it as a problem, in my opinion, does show an evolution of consciousness.
There's another trend, and the networks haven't picked it up yet, and I don't know if the sociologists have really clued into it, but it's there.
Though the issues of fatherlessness plague us at nearly every turn, there are things in motion that can create change. Programs, curriculums, spiritual community groups, literature, and nameless other efforts that are wanting to shift the paradigm. One of those is Wild Man. Created by Mark Garcia and founded on the philosophies of Father Richard Rohr and John Eldredge, Wild Man takes small groups of men out onto the wide ocean waters of Mexico, where they are challenged to not only deal with the damage they've done to others, but to dissolve those vows that they've built their lives upon.
Pretty much once they get out there, they are subjected to what Father Rohr calls the liminal space, the liminal time. And for the most part, we see a man come in as this and leave as something else. And that's pretty darn exciting.
Garcia says that after a few days on the water and a few nights of unpacking the issues, better husbands, better fathers, better men emerge.
Finally see this cloud, this haze that we all walk around in every day, and we don't even know about these behaviors that we use. Why did I say that? Why did I talk to my son that way? Why did I behave to this business associate that way? It's from the vow. And we help them discover that, and they, for the most part, it is very life revealing. And we look back and we go, oh, the body's in the wake that I have left behind. And the way I have hurt my children through that vow, the way I have hurt my marriage through that vow. And we help the gentlemen and the men that are there see that. And at least by seeing it, they can begin to understand it and work on it.
Individuals are getting better. There is a resurgence of a longing for the true things, for a real life, and there's a resurgence of fathering.
Eldredge notes that one of the biggest groups pushing for change can be found in the church, and much of that has to do with their perspective on fatherhood.
Judaism and Christianity and what they offer the world in terms of God as Father, God as one who cares, God is one who is present, God is one who will provide, God is one who will discipline, right? That trend in the church now of men rising up to become good men it's a spiritual phenomenon. I'm very, very hopeful for the men's movement. I'm very hopeful for men.
It's just, I fell down so hard. I went to a place that I didn't want to be. But it was for a good purpose. I had no problems doing it.
7 months after his arrest for the Red River parole violation, Johnny Tapia was released from prison. At 43, he was a year older than when we first interviewed him, and 30 pounds lighter. His first order of business was to get back into the ring. So, at the OK Casino in Espanola, New Mexico, the former world champion readies himself for the only thing that he's really ever known: battle.
I'm battling my drug problems, and I'm battling a fighter. Life is always a battle. It's who comes up standing.
But this fight night is a little different. 2 hours before Johnny steps into the ring, his son, Little Johnny, will make his professional boxing debut. Midway through the second round, his mother, Teresa, Johnny's wife and manager, gets up and leaves the fight. Within seconds, Johnny Tapia appears from nowhere, and the embattled boxer, who has spent a lifetime with the spotlight on him, sheds it to become a father.
Jump right, G! Jump right!
Little Johnny loses the fight, and his father, who did not lose for the first 13 years of his career, whispered two things to his son: "I love you, and I'm proud." As Tapia's fight, labeled the Battle for Redemption, draws closer, the crowd becomes restless, anxious for Johnny. They've watched him grow up. They've watched him hit bottom. They've watched him win fights and lose family members. He is them and their struggles, and that is why they welcomed him back. For 3 rounds, the fight goes back and forth. Tapia is a bit slower than he was in his youth. His punches not as powerful, his feet not as fast. But he's still a world champion. And in the 4th round, Johnny provided what everyone there needed from him: hope for redemption and a solid left hook.
There you go.
The tormented champion, who'd been knocked down only once in the ring but so many times by life, is the fighter within us all. Like Johnny, we are now free to fight once more. We're free to deny the demons of our youth. We're free to be better men, free to be better husbands. We are free to be better fathers. We're free to be absent no more. Ed Murrow once said that some truths are so naked that we feel sorry for them and cover them up, at least a little bit. The pandemic of fatherlessness is a truth that we can no longer hide under the blanket of our apathy. We must begin to fight for the hearts of our children, for if we do not, they and every child from now until the end will wander this world with a hole in their chest, and we'll have no one to blame but ourselves.
Please welcome to the stage Justin Hunt and James Hetfield.
I think they put me on the outside because I'm too short to be in the middle.
You're an outsider.
So maybe we just start off with maybe Justin talk a little bit about what inspired you to pursue this subject.
Really the idea came from a couple of different angles. One was Wild Man was actually a trip that I've been on 3 times with men like that were important to me, role models. The other was the fact that I've read Wild at Heart a few times and have led some Wild at Heart groups for men. And then the third is the fact that I'm a single father. I mean, the little girl in the opening scene is my daughter, and the little boy at the end is my son.
You got some beautiful kids.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I'll let him out of the closet when we get back to the house. But no, I was just realizing how important it was, and following up the first film, American Meth, that I did, I wanted to do something that was really important. You're the one. Thank you. I just wanted to do another topic matter that was really important, and I may have pulled an Orson Welles and done something I can't top now, but it was an important topic, and I'm glad to have done it.
Did you have an idea of all the people you wanted to talk to, or was that a gradual process of accumulating the stories?
I had a few. Johnny Tapia was the first person that I thought of, and actually the edit. I thought of an edit first, which was him talking about how important it was to have a father, or how it affected his life that he didn't. Cutting that to him just knocking the crap out of somebody, which is exactly what we got to do. He knocked the guy out right in front of me. So high school kids, I knew I wanted to talk to them. The prostitutes, and then some other things just fell into place, which is kind of how documentary filmmaking works. You put your raft in the river, and it goes where it's going to go.
And at what point did you two get together? Did James get involved in the project?
It was just about a year ago, a little under a year ago. As I was telling you guys, I had gotten in touch with Tiffany, and I knew James's story, and I actually talked to a friend of mine not 3 months before we got in touch, saying how great it would be to have him involved, but it's really difficult. It's difficult to get to these guys because they're so busy and everybody wants some of their time. But it just happened to work out, and I think it was last April that we did the initial interview.
This is not your first time seeing the film, is it?
No. I saw it once at home by myself, and it was pretty moving. And then I had forced my wife to watch it, but she wanted to see it. But it was great watching it with her, and it was really great sitting and watching it in a movie theater. It hit me even harder in here, and especially the picture of my mom. It was tough. It was tough, and my wife's there holding my hand, squeezing it, and when Justin contacted me about this, our management gets hundreds of requests for things to involve us, and when they find out that we're off tour, there's all these extra ones that come in and want to get involved in things, and maybe 10% of the stuff makes it through the filter, and we actually see the email. And this was one that it made total sense. I plugged right into it. It was first a question if you wanted to narrate the film or even be in it, and then it was, what should we do? And then I think with the interview, I guess he kind of chose to go with that, which he felt was powerful enough to put in the movie. And I really loved that it wasn't centered around Metallica. It wasn't centered around all of that stuff. It was, I'm just another person in there telling my story.
Well, I think the angle that James really brings to it that was important to me kind of parallels the story of the prostitutes in the sense that when you start at the end and go backwards, that's kind of how I edited that piece, was you start with this one woman and you end with the mass grave in Albuquerque. And if you kind of dissect that and go backwards, you see how if a father would have made a good choice and been engaged in his daughter's life, she wouldn't have become a prostitute. Thus, she wouldn't have been in the situation and been one of the girls that was found in the grave. It's the same thing with James, but on a positive sense, where he had a father wound, he got into music, he became a part of this band, he formed this band, and has touched millions of people because of it. It just goes to show the impact and how it can be used for the good or for the bad.
We can open it up to questions now. Yes, right there.
Yes. That's what my parents called me. So yeah.
You experienced a couple different types of abandonment in your life. Me personally, losing a mother at a young age, I felt abandoned in that sense. And have you felt abandoned from your mother's loss, and how is that compared to the abandonment you experienced from your father?
I'm just going to repeat some of the questions or synthesize them, but ask about the two parts of the abandonment, two abandonments in his life, of being abandoned by his mother and being abandoned by his father, and how he sees both of those.
Obviously more direct, your father chooses not to be there, but then the mother illness, there was that aspect.
Right. Well, yeah. My father made a decision. He chose to leave, and that hurts. That hurts more. But watching my mother wither away, and because of the rules of the religion, was extremely difficult. And not being able to step up, not even to say anything about it. The family was. I hear it from other families, like, oh, we didn't really talk about sex or talk about things like that. We didn't talk about practically anything really around health or, like my mother just becoming so thin. But the father wound of him leaving and not saying goodbye, showing up maybe a year later in his, what did he have? Some sports car of some sorts. He had a Stingray, and hey, come on, let's go spend some money. And meanwhile, we're living in poverty. It hurt a lot.
Yes, back there.
Hi, Darin. My daughter and I are struggling in a single parent home, and I know that you have children and probably some getting close to maybe teenage years. How do you feel like, or what do you feel like you will impart to your teenagers growing up that maybe you missed from your parents?
What do you think you impart to your teenagers that you missed growing up?
That me? Oh. Have teenagers? Oh my God. Almost. Yes, almost. Well, I would instill them to be themselves, to speak honestly, to go with what feels right, and to ask us some questions. What did you do? Do you know anything about that? And if I don't, I'll tell them, well, I don't know. Maybe we can find out together. And we'll ask someone who does know. That was a big wall with my father. I'd ask him questions, and he would just, oh, blah, 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 blah. And it just sounded like blah, blah, blah. He didn't know. He did not know. But he couldn't tell me that he didn't know. And it's okay to not know. But it's also even better to find out together.
You have wonderful kids, by the way.
Thank you.
I have to say that as well.
It's her fault.
I know that. Say who you are. This is Rachel. Raquel, sorry. Raquel, we screened the movie in Albuquerque, and she came up, I found them because they had Metallica shirts on. And I said, you guys come to see Absent? And she said, yeah. I said, where'd you guys come from? And she said, Vegas, because there's Las Vegas, New Mexico. I said, you guys drove 3 hours to get here? And she said, no, we came from Las Vegas, Nevada. They drove 10 hours to come see the film, and now she's here, so thank you for coming. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I had to point that out.
In this whole issue,
Yeah, I'm sorry if you can maybe pick it up because people can't hear you in here.
You stated that your dad was your hero, and only later did you realize how much he influenced you and he was such a part of your life. And you describe him as very strong. And I guess my question is, do you still think your dad is a big influence in your life and still your hero?
That is great. And yeah, that's a great, yeah. It doesn't make much sense, does it? But, I guess I couldn't write Clint Eastwood and I don't know. The strength that I talk about, I see it now as fear. I see it now as him, and I'll see myself crack down on my boy that way as well. Bring down the hammer, and it's not okay. It doesn't help him one bit. So that's the strength. There's some good parts to that, but there's also very it's just a wrong message to teach him. There's much better ways to show him strength, standing up for, like some of the people in the movie were saying, stand up and protect your sisters, stand up for your family, show some assertiveness and taking the anger and using it in an assertive way instead of taking it out on your family, because it's so easy, because they are there and they're the ones you love and they will always love you, maybe. So you can take it out on them and they'll always still be there. And that's not right. Yes?
Thanks for making the film, and a couple of things that struck me. When we were standing in line to get in here, we were standing with the high school counselor. And I was just really taken with the fact that there were a lot of young people in line that had the Metallica shirts on, and I thought, well, they're obviously here to see James, and they're going to get a lot out of this, whether they're here for the study matter or not. And he said, I'm not here because I'm a Metallica fan, I'm here because I care about kids. And all the kids that he sees that are fatherless or have lost a father. So I want to applaud you for making the film, but you for, people will see it because of you, obviously, it's someone who wouldn't. And I wonder about the distribution, and how hard it is to get documentaries seen in this country, and if you have plans to try to get it into high schools and to show it to kids.
Do you have plans to get the film into high schools? That marker?
I have plans to get it into every hand.
Great movies on the way out. All right.
No, I do, and I'm not saying that in a commercial sense, well, kind of, but I mean that in the way that I do want to get it in every household that we can get it into, every classroom we can get it into, every church we can get it into, every prison we can get it into. And we've gone through the film festival process, which is kind of how this works. You want to get it out there, and you want it seen, and you want to see how it does. And the response has been phenomenal. And you can see that in the sense that we've won festivals here in the U.S., but in Spain and England and Germany as well. And so it's very universal, and I'm excited to, in the past day and a half, I've gotten 5 emails from 5 different countries, people that want to see the film. And whether it's because it's James or not, they're still going to watch it and they're going to get that message. And so yes, we're working towards distribution domestically, internationally, educationally. Michael and I, my music supervisor, we screen it in churches as well. We're in the process of planning some of those things. There are issues that you have to settle before you can do that, and we're working on those, and hopefully it'll be settled soon and we can start getting this in front of way more people than this. So.
Now, the quicker and most succinct questions we can get to everyone. So, okay, start there.
Well, that's a good question. You know, did not having a father kind of in a way force me to be a better father, right? Well, yeah. Well, you know, I thought I was so scared to be a dad. You know, I was waiting for the right lightning bolt to hit me with all the instructions, and all of a sudden I knew how to do it and what I was going to do, and okay, it's going to be great, it's going to be easy. They have taught me more than I would have ever been able to teach them. They have taught me how to be the dad that they need. I see what they need. And, you know, the kids are pretty smart, manipulative. They can get what they need. But, you know, I was a kid once as well. And you can see the parts which are good for them, not so good, age appropriateness, all of that. And yes, you can ride your horse and go to ballet with your daughter and show up at a Metallica concert anytime.
Okay, as I asked before, please direct quick questions. Yes? Go ahead.
This is for James. You know, like when you went through that hard negative process growing up, and some people tend to use it like in a negative way, or they use drugs or whatever. You chose to use it in a positive way when it's time for something to use it, and some people write poetry or art or whatever. So, do you feel that these hard times help you kind of get to where you are now, and you look at it now? You wouldn't have been.
Do you look at that the hard times kind of helped you put you where you are now?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is kind of, you know, this is the path that I'm put on by a higher power of sorts. That through the struggle, there's a story to tell. And like I said in the movie, relating to the struggle is more powerful than getting a bunch of answers on how to deal with a problem. You know, relating to the struggle. And, you know, I think this movie, getting it into high schools, getting it to as many places as possible is important. It might not, it's a universal thread, but it might not hit everyone as powerful as it does, say, me or some other one who grew up without a father. But there's people out there, and I was certainly one of them up to 10 years ago, not even knowing that that's why. Not even, why am I doing these things? Why am I saying, I will never do that, and I'm doing it? You know, I couldn't put words to it. I couldn't put feelings to it. And just watching this movie, I mean, there's some potent stuff in that movie, and it has really allowed me to breathe better, knowing that I'm not alone. So the more people that see it, I think it's going to give them some freedom.
The other person there, yeah.
Just like quick, kudos on the movie. I didn't know what to expect with James being in it.
It's going to be awesome to do that.
I'm following my job. I've got another one, second child for 3 weeks, and this is kind of a really good time. And I just want to say, like, how the movie was more centered around being a father, and that's what really hit me with it more than James being in it and understanding his struggles. And it just comes out of a time in my life when I'm struggling, when it's like me to be a good father for my kids, and I just think that was
Well, thank you, and kudos to you being a dad and being there.
Man.
Because it's not easy. It truly is not easy. And there are days where I just think, I don't know do I really want to be here? I just want to run. I want to get in my car and just bolt. And that's okay to feel that. It's totally fine. And to talk to your spouse about that feeling, or whoever's helping you, and even your kids, because they will be parents one day. And it's like, it's okay to feel like bolt and get you time. Because that's a part of the strength that people were talking about.
How do you create fun with your children?
You want to jump on that one?
Well, I'll tell you, kids plus water equals fun. Kids plus anything, really, yeah. It's almost like the less they have, the more fun, more creative they can become. And they start working together with things, you know, buying them the hot new toy just certainly doesn't satisfy. That's getting thrown into that hole that they think they need to fill. And the fulfilling it is with family and enjoying those times together. But yeah, going to the water has always been, swimming,
I think if you want to create fun with your children, then you just give them you. That's all they need. And it's so misconstrued how providing certain things or buying things, that's not it. That's not it. It's just giving them you. That's all that they need, and that's where the fun will happen if you just do that. And you'll make more of an impact that way than buying them anything.
Yeah.
For James, the film talked about validation by fathers. You've reached the pinnacle of rock and roll. Did your dad ever validate your success?
Did your father actually validate your success?
Well, it was tough because I would say yes, he did, but it didn't feel real because of all the stuff that had happened before that. And, it was around the Black Album time, and just before that, I think the Justice for All period, late 80s, that he showed up, and there's always that, oh, he's showing up because we're famous part that it never felt authentic. Never did. And when I would go and visit him in the house that I bought, he'd be asking me to sign things for people that he knew, and it just felt so unfather-like.
Yeah. Does being sober make it more difficult?
Right. Well, I would say yes and no. With the alcohol, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know if it's better or not. It was just a big haze, and that's all my childhood was. And they talk about, other people are talking about how they remember when I first rode my bike and this and that. I don't remember any of that stuff. It's so sad, and I'm tired of not remembering things. And I want to be present, and I want to be there, and I want to remember things. Yes, it is difficult, and it's also great. It's great and bad. The extremes show up, and this is me trying to be a normal person without the crutches.
I have a question for Justin. In terms of your filmmaking process, how much of your original narrative structure changed once you started doing the interviews with people and after you started looking at your footage?
Did the film structure change after you started doing the interviews?
Documentaries are more of a news aspect kind of thing, and that's my background. I was actually a news anchor for NBC affiliates for about 8 years, and so both this and American Meth are more of, 90-minute or 75-minute news stories, really. And so in that process, the people that you talk to are the ones telling the story. And so I didn't really have a process laid out. I kind of knew who I wanted to talk to, but didn't really know what they were going to say. So you let them say it, and you let them tell it, and then my job is to kind of, interweave all those threads together to tell the story. And so I think when you're going into a documentary process, you don't really have anything laid out, or you're not doing your job. You have to be objective, and if you've got a plan before you start, you're not being objective. And so it didn't really change. You kind of just got to ride the wave and stick with the vibe that you're getting, and then you put it all together at the end. The only time that there was a real shift is when James got involved, because he's a bigger figure than most, and how do you fit that in without making him a bigger figure than everybody else? And that was really important to me. And, he's with Metallica, and that's great. I love those guys, but it's not about James. And it's like, how do you downplay that? And so that was the only thing that I really had to shift when I was editing.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, obviously James has the lyrics that you can express yourself and you have the film, and you want to play in as many places as you can, but I'm wondering, when you've seen your own lives and your
We get it now. Okay.
Yeah, maybe that's up to the audience to get a copy of the film and give it to somebody.
If I had a place to send you to get one, I would send you right now. That's an interesting question, man.
That's a great question. And I think, through example is really how you can, the really only natural and unpersonal way you can teach people something. You, by example, my life, they can maybe see that, well, his life's better, and I want that. So it has to be within. It does have to be within, but nudges certainly help.
Well, I think the thing that's cool in our two stories, and they vary a little bit, is that because of his level of popularity and because of the music, people have him under a microscope and can see the story. As far as my films are concerned, you watch the film, and it's a movie, and after 90 minutes it's over, but what it does is it opens up dialogue. And that's when you have an opportunity, if you want to approach someone and say, you know what, man, I watched the coolest film the other day, and you start a dialogue with that person. And I think that's one way you can use film to kind of give them a nudge, and everybody wants to watch a movie. And then after that, it's like with American Meth. A guy came up to me and said, hey, how do I talk to my kid about this drug? And you have that film, and it's like, I told him that's your pitch to hit right there. That's your opportunity as a father to have the discussion. I think that's the way film can be used in this particular case.
And it is really ironic that, the last thing a father wants to hear is you're not being a good father, because that opens the wound even further. It's a catch-22 almost. Needing to discover themselves is pretty key.
Yeah.
Justin, even though the film is about fathers, it, I think, makes some really interesting comments on the role of women in the family. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. I particularly noticed it when the kids, or some of the subjects were talking about their mother's love and affection and acceptance as almost in the backseat role to their father. So can you talk a little bit about the role of women not only in the film, but just in
Her comment is that the movie has interesting things to say about the role of women in the family as well.
And they absolutely do, and they can do an equal amount of damage. And that's true. I mean, there's another author, and his name escapes me now, but he also did a video curriculum, and it talks a lot about mother wounds, and like overbearing mother wounds, where a mother can have too much control, and it has a devastating effect on the child. The thing about it is, like, you can only take on one topic at a time, which is why I don't go more into that. But it's definitely there. It's definitely relevant. The major difference, though, I think, is that because you have that natural connection to your mother, we're physically connected to her, and we're nursed by our mothers, and we have that nurturing connection. It is the father that's the first guy, the first person outside of her that you're like, hey, what do you think? And when they don't answer that question, or they answer it with, I think you suck. You know what I mean? Then you spend your whole life going, oh, well, he wasn't there, so I'll get the answer from somebody else. And so that's, I think, the major difference between a father and a mother. But it is an equal role, obviously, because it takes two to make this happen. But psychologically, I think that we there's just one more element that we need from him that we don't need from her as much.
Yes, back there.
I just wanted to thank you for taking me this film. I was so struck by it. And I wanted to know, the thing that left me kind of impressed is that I've got two kids. Their fathers chose not to be part of their lives. And no matter how good of a mom I am, I realize there's nothing I can do to fill that room. And I wanted to know, either Justin, from your interviews, or James, from your experience, what was the effect that made you use that wound in a positive? Like, what helps you out? How'd you use that wound in a positive way?
Well, first, thank you for the compliment. Second, it is tough. It's tough to play both roles. And I understand that. I'm a single dad, and there are roles that I don't know how to do to the best of, my ability, or to the best they need to be done. So I can have compassion for that, and I understand that. But don't be discouraged by the fact that just because he's not choosing to be involved, there can still be a positive male influence in their life. So don't give up hope on the fact that that can't happen, because it can. You know what? That's why it's so cool that James is here, because he's become that for a lot of people. On the website, there's a place where people... Where'd that come up from? Sorry. You know what I meant, Francesca. No, but his music is that for a lot of people. And if you go to the website, there are some really touching letters to fathers on there, and a lot of them talk about how James filled that void in their life through his music. So, you know, don't give up hope on the fact that it can't happen. And whether it's a teacher, or whether it's an uncle, or whether it's somebody, it can happen. And you are... That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's where they're going to go. And you know, it's not your role to take on, but if you're taking it on, that's highly commendable. So, you know, don't give up hope on that fact, because it absolutely can happen, and I do understand what you're dealing with. Yeah, I guess we're moving on.
Yeah, the fame and fortune doesn't fill the hole that a father leaves, or a mother, or anyone important in your life. You know, at the end of the day, relationships are what matters, and the stuff is just stuff, and it breaks down. You know, it's you don't take it with you. As simple as that. Nothing replaces, no matter how poor a family is, if they've got a strong family bond and they rely on each other, that's a rich family.
Can I ask you a question? Would you say that that's kind of a cause and effect type thing, that maybe that's why you worked so hard to be successful at music, was to maybe get that?
To get validation, as in...
Yeah, I mean, to fill the gap.
Well, I just think there was the drive. It's possible. I mean, there's lots of, well, there's people here that will say other things, you know, getting the tattoos, getting the this, the that. There's always something that can be pinned on that.
Yeah.
You know, part of it is character, part of it is that. And
Yeah.
that makes up me.
Yeah.
There was some drive
Right.
that came from somewhere that I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best at what I could be.
I think it's interesting, because that's what Garcia talks about on there, how we try to fill that void, whether it's materialism or sex or being good at sports or whatever it is. So, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, there. Yes. You're saying they're very painful topics. How do you cope interviewing people?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that question. Have very many people seen American Men? Yeah. Okay. There's a scene in there that I get asked about a lot, where there's a little girl who the parents are crashed out because they're on meth, and she hasn't eaten for a few days, and so she gets in the fridge herself, and people are like, why didn't you help her? And had I helped her, I wouldn't have been doing my job. Now, if she would have been in really serious danger, I would have done something. The question is, how do I cope with it? I think that when you spend as much time as I have behind the camera, things become two-dimensional. And you're looking at life through a viewfinder, and it's two-dimensional, and you're just thinking about the product. I would have stepped in, I'm telling you, if something bad would have happened, but I also realized I needed to let it happen. And James and I and Francesca were talking about it tonight, as a matter of fact, how a lot of these interviews, there's a piece of every one that sticks with you. I'm not sure I have coped with it yet. I've just kept moving forward, and hopefully they don't catch up with me, but I know that a piece of every one of those people has stayed with me. So,
yes, back there.
I want to offer, first of all, thanks, Justin, for the film. Secondly, I wanted to offer hope for those who may be struggling with these kind of issues. You mentioned Robert Lewis, or you touched on him a little bit earlier, who's put together a 3-year material called Men's Fraternity. And anyone who's struggling with these issues, I'd encourage you to go onto the web and check it out. There are men here in Marin County who have been doing this for the last 5 years. I brought this material to the county at that time. And there's over 100 men who have begun working on these kind of issues in their own lives and working with other men as well. So I want to offer that encouragement, not just to men, but also to women in the audience.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
This question's for James. I'm assuming you're a busy guy. When you're away or on tour, how do you make sure that you remain available for your children?
How do you make sure you're available to your children while you're on tour with your very busy schedule?
Right, very great question. And I recall, I'd like to start by saying, 20 years ago, being on the road, before having kids, looking at some of the road crew, trying to contact their family on the rotary phone, from Finland, and can't get through with that. And I was just like, yeah, whatever, My heart goes out to them because they were trying their best to connect. Nowadays, hey, what time do you want to FaceTime? What time do you want to hook up? I mean, there are so many ways to connect with the family these days. Yeah, that's looking at dad on a little phone or something, but being at home, I mean, we have scheduled our touring now. Everyone in the band is a father, so 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off is what we do, and nothing is going to make us stray from that, because it is very important. There's a very clear priority list, and family is at top.
Yes.
So a lot of people in the movie were shown kind of stuck in the fatherhood and in the family, and you seem to have grown out of it to some extent. At least you mentioned learning how to love. And what have you done, and has your life in the last like 9 or 10 years with sobriety and all that, has that contributed?
Has your sober life contributed to dealing with the world?
Well, I'm certainly not cured, and I don't know how to love. I'm learning. Every day is a learning process, and acceptance is a big part of that. Accepting that I don't want to be here right now, but I'm going to be because I know it's for the greater good. That's tough. That's a tough one. I'm still working on all those things, but without clarity, without all of the other crutches that I had, it wouldn't be possible to even have awareness about it. And I'd go through with a fog and maybe get introduced to my kids when they're 30 and say, hey, remember me? And that's a horrible, horrible thought. So I had a wonderful wife who kind of basically kicked my ass when I was not showing up. And she has helped me greatly to become a father and show up. I'd say one of the greatest gifts that I've got was, maybe 5 years into sobriety, getting a Father's Day card from her saying that I'm really proud of you, that you've shown up for your kids.
The hands keep going up. Do you want to go on, or you?
Up to you now.
Yes, a few more. Do a few more, yeah. Way over there, yes. The question was how, how did you get the money to make the film, or that must have taken money, and then how are you going to get it out into the world?
Well, American Meth I paid for entirely on my own, and Absent I paid for entirely on my own. And then when the film was done, I went to a friend of mine and his family and said, "Hey, I've got this film that's done, and I really think we can make a difference with it. Would you be interested in helping me do that?" And he and his family said yes, and they gave us some money to do the film festivals and things like that. Stand up, Dally. Brad Dally is right there. And Tony and his wife and his family. And it's funny how I've been blessed in the process of this thing, because without Brad and Tanya and their family, I wouldn't have been able to do this. And so because of them, we got to go to all these places and win these festivals and be here. And so that's what's really important. As far as what we're going to do now, it really just depends on, how we can, or who we can work with, who wants to work with us, who wants to get it out, and just getting all the things squared away that need to be squared away. I don't think it's a big secret. It's pretty cool to have 11 Metallica songs in a movie. Not that I'm counting. And not that I know it's the second most of any other film ever made, except for Some Kind of Monster.
I think that one had an inside track. Wow. Does management know about this?
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. But, there's a process involved with having that much involvement, and we're getting all that stuff squared away, and as soon as we do, then we'll start making phone calls, and we'll start trying to work with people and get it out in the world. And we're so close, and I'm excited because I think it'll have a big impact. It's just, we're doing things the right way, and hopefully it won't be long, and it'll be out there.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for making your movie.
Thank you.
At the moment, I want to lead towards asking another question, but I made a documentary about prostitution and years ago, and I think it's great that you're bringing up that topic. My question at the moment is about the race issue that came up very briefly. You talked about how Hispanic and Black families have incredibly different statistics than White families. That would be good to talk about.
The question was the race issue that comes up in the film in terms of the statistics.
Yeah. The only thing I can say to that real briefly is that when you're taking on a topic this large, it felt like I had a thing of clay as big as this room, and I'm trying to make it into a spoon. I couldn't really delve into all of those little cracks and crevices of the topic, and so I didn't really go into it all that much. There's a lot to be said about it, but I can't speak on it, fairly, because I don't have all the information I should have to talk about that. But I just wanted to touch on it, but you're right, there's a lot more there in that subject matter for sure.
We have a quick question. Yeah.
Mine's more of a statement. My father died when I was 9 years old, and 99% of everything I saw on the screen I can agree with, hands down. And it's made me value the type of husband that I am, and the father that I grew up with. And thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Totally worth it. Sounds good.
Hi, James. Was your father still alive when you started to have kids? And if so, did he say anything?
Was your father still alive when you started to have kids? And did he tell you anything?
Right. No, he was not. He was not alive. He was not around, and actually, my mother wasn't either. So it's a tough one, and I tell my kids that they're here somehow, some way. They show up, as a great thing, as a lesson, as anything, and they're watching over as well.
Yes.
Justin, first of all, I want to thank you for James has inspired me musically ever since I started wanting to be a man, and I didn't have a father myself, and now you brought me to life. I would inspire me more when I have a daughter. I'm seeing very James, do you feel that
myself.
Yeah. Is it therapy?
Being a father, it could be, there are parts when it's therapy, and there are parts when I need therapy. But yes, absolutely. I just embrace it as a part of my story, the next part of my story. And, you know, there's extremes, and I live in an extreme world.
Is that a sign?
Did I turn it off?
Can't take you.
You think I know how to work these things. But, in the world of extremes, you know, going from having a father that was very strict, very religious, and you know, a minister in the church, and blah blah blah, and then me wanting to be the softest, greatest, cuddly dad ever. That's not good either, you know. So never saying never on the strictness is not real. You know, I have to see both walls and find out where the middle is and get there.
Well, I think before another mic goes out, I think maybe it's time to wrap this up. But thank you so much.
This guy was a producer, and this guy was a journalist, and this guy was a journalist, worked as a news anchor in Albuquerque, and decided to kind of take a different career track, and kind of shifted over and made this. And absolutely a great job. Thanks for making us aware of this. And Justin, great to have you here. God bless you, man.
Thank you very
and he's
much.
going to introduce anyone else he might want to introduce to you.
Yeah, I've got a few introductions. Thanks for coming out, by the way. I appreciate that. I was hoping for 40 or 50, but this is a little bit better than I was expecting. There are a lot of friends from a lot of places that are here, and I just want to thank all of you personally. For the people I haven't met yet, thank you very much. I'm going to be out front after. I'll meet every one of you if you want to. That's what I'm here for. So there's a couple of people I need to introduce real quickly, if you guys don't mind. He's a very important part of the film, very important to me, and he's one handsome guy. He's the last guy you see in the film, and if you don't mind, will you give a round of applause to my son, Lance? Lance, come on out, buddy. And then the other one, what are you doing, big guy?
I don't know, it's just...
Rock and roll stance. Okay. He's been hanging out with James too much. There's a lot of sugar back there. The other person I'd like to introduce, I think probably touched a lot of you as well. You know, I've shown the film in 6 countries so far, and she's touched people all over the world with her scene. And I know that she's probably got to you as well. So I'd like to introduce my daughter, Abby, the girl on the bike. There's a couple of other people I'd like to point out real briefly, and then we'll get to the Q&A. There are some amazing stories that have happened since we made the film. One, of course, is an unbelievable story with Johnny Tapia, which is going to be a bonus feature on the DVD. But there's another great story here that I'd like to point out, and it's a privilege to have this person here. She has a very touching part of the movie, and it's just it's amazing what happens in people's lives, and it's amazing what happens, the struggles they go through, and it's amazing what happens, the great things that happen after that. So I'd like to introduce, if she'd stand up real briefly, Andrea from the film. Andrea, where are you? Where'd you go? Are you here? Stand up. Andrea. Oh no. Keep standing. You know, she's a wonderful person. She's a great friend of mine, and it's disheartening to hear what happened to her. But I'm very excited to introduce tonight her husband Brandon. They were just married. So Brandon, please. Thank you guys for being here. Natalie was going to be here as well, but she couldn't make it tonight. So, another person I'd like to point out real briefly. You know, I have a father. He was involved. I think he probably has a complex now after I did this film. But my dad Glenn was there. My stepfather Joey Boutte, he's from Louisiana. They were great role models in my life. But there's one more guy who is like a father to me. He's a spiritual mentor. He's a life mentor. And all of you would be doing something different tonight if it weren't for this guy. And it really, really warms my heart to be able to introduce to you publicly my great friend, mentor, Mark Garcia is here with us. So. Mr. Humble over there. I'd also just like to thank everyone that was part of this at Central Christian. Paul, we came a long way from that little coffee meeting, 3 weeks ago? So Cal, of course, Jeremy, everybody who's been a part of this, and from the green room to working the front to taking tickets, selling tickets, the projectionists, everyone. If we could, one more for them. Who dressed you?
Me?
Okay. All right, give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Okay, you're back with Dad. Go back with Dad. Bye. Okay. In 1986, my friend Joe Vigil, we were in 5th grade. He introduced me to a band called Metallica. In 2008, I went to a concert, went with a friend. It was a birthday gift, and I got VIP tickets. So I got up to the very front of the stage, to the front towards this. I was about this far away from these guys right here. And they came out, and, they were playing, and they were doing their thing, and I'm like looking at them like, you guys, it's me. We've been friends for 25 years. I felt like one of the teenage girls on the Ed Sullivan Show. I'm like, oh, James! You don't have to laugh at me. But, I got a pick at that show, and I got a set list. And I left that show, and I remember thinking very clearly, you know what? I'm cool with that. That's the closest I'm going to get. And I'm cool with that. So, in 2010, January, a friend of mine was making fun of me on Facebook because of some pictures I had of a concert I went to. And I asked why, and she said, well, my kids go to school with James's kids. And I said, oh, really? So long story short, her husband was an entertainment attorney as well. I sent her an email. She gave it to her husband. He got it to Metallica's attorney. It got down to James. 3 months later, they said he was still interested in the project. Do I still want to talk to him? Which I can't tell you what my thought was. But 9 days later, I'm sitting in front of him, and I'm talking to this guy. And we got into a really deep conversation, as you can tell. A couple weeks later, we went back, and he did the narration on the lyrics to the songs. And we just kind of kept in touch very briefly, very indirectly, as a matter of fact. And then in March, we did a screening in San Rafael, and he came to that. 2 weeks later, we were invited to go on Fox and Friends National Morning Newscast together, and we went at 3 in the morning, and we did that. And throughout all this, we've talked a little bit more. We've talked about more in-depth stuff. We've talked about deeper stuff, personal stuff. And I guess I just can't express to you what it means to me to be able to say that James Hetfield is in my movie. I can't tell you what it means to me to say he supports my movie. But most importantly, I can't even begin to tell you what it means to me to say that he's my friend. And so with that, I would really, really like you to give a loud welcome to my friend, James Hetfield. Yeah, man. Let's do it. So.
You didn't tell me there was going to be all these people.
I told him I was looking for 50. Yeah. This is what we got. So, I mean, with that, really, I mean, this is wide open. We've got mics. Where do we have mics? We've got mics right here and right here. And the time is now to come up and ask your questions. Not all at once. All right.
Thank you very much for everything. Obviously, thank you for coming to town. Quick question. How has what happened with you and your father changed you for, what do you do differently for your kids?
A great question, because, you know, being a part of a project, being a part of any endeavor that you somewhat support, you kind of, you basically get out what you put into it. I've really learned so much from this process, and when Justin asked me to be a part of this, I had no idea how much it was going to affect me and my family, and how much good things could show up in my life. My relationship with my son has definitely changed quite a bit. I think when his dad goes out on the road for lengths of time, he's at home with his two sisters and his mom, and there's a lot of estrogen in the house, you know, and we even have 2 female cats, all right? And so he's kind of on his own. And this last, I guess since January, probably November, we've been off a tour, and I've made it a real priority to get plugged into the family completely, and especially with my boy, to just fire up, you know, shake up the fire, get some embers going of the masculine side of of the Hetfield family, and Metallica's my other family, and get to, you know, go to sports games together, showing up for his stuff, and just goofing around, even just being there. You know, when the ladies go off to do their thing, him and I rule in the house. We're playing music loud. We're doing stuff that mom won't let him do, and it's just one of those things that you got to do. And I get a lot of joy out of it as well. And the relationship with my girls as well has totally stepped up to another level of me showing them how much they're appreciated, how beautiful they are, just as they are, and you know, tackling some of the issues that are starting to come up with teens. I've got my oldest is turning 13 next month, and you know, learning about sex, learning about dating, learning about puberty, things like that. And it's a very scary subject for especially a dad, and to just open the dialogue and just say, hey, if you want to talk about it, I'm here. I know mom is probably going to have a lot more in common, but I'm with you and supporting you all the way.
James, after being involved in the Christian Science religion, do you still believe in Christ?
Hello? I'm sorry, was there a question in there?
There was. After being involved in the Christian Science religion, do you still believe in Christ?
I need to hear that one more time. Can you turn it up? I'm deaf for some reason.
If you want.
I didn't even hear that. So.
Okay. After being involved in the Christian Science religion, do you still believe in Christ?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I believe
that, I believe, I was put through some tests as a child, and, the religion was really, really difficult for me to grasp as a child. And my father being the equivalent of the pastor and really hardcore at home. And I felt very, very smothered by all of that, and I didn't understand it. And I didn't feel free to ask questions about it, because that would bring up my lack of faith or something and really scare everyone. And so I have learned what great things have happened to people that can embrace a power greater than themselves, and myself being able to let go of the steering wheel and not try and drive my life, and knowing that there is a higher power taking care of all of us, and I don't have to worry about all of the other stuff I used to worry about. I can just enjoy being me and who I am in His eyes. And a person, whether you believe in Jesus Christ or not, I think the icon or the belief that someone was like that, and to emulate that behavior, you can't deny that it makes you feel good.
Hey, can we move at least the question over here a little bit so we can see who's asked? There we go.
Can I ask each of you a question?
What's that?
May I ask each of you a question?
Sure.
Okay, so for Justin, a lot of your movie dealt with people who were wounded by not having a father, who ended up into like drugs or prostitution. And I lost my father when I was 13, when he put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. But I never fell into that. Do you think that people use fatherlessness as an excuse to go into drugs or abuse?
Yeah, well, I don't think that they use it as an excuse, but I think that a lot of people that turn their woundedness to whatever it might be, whether it is the drug abuse or whether it is prostitution or whatever the case might be, they'll find a way to rationalize that. And they'll find, I think it's almost safe to say that's part of the addictive nature, is that you'll continue to find a reason to do it. And so I don't know if that completely answers your question, but I think that a lot of times people will use that as their way to keep doing those addictive type things. So.
And James, in your music, particularly Fade to Black, really helped me deal with a lot of those things. And I saw you in India last month, so good job, sir. And so I just wanted to say thank you. And can I come get my picture with you?
Maybe later.
All right.
That was more than one question, huh?
Yeah. I think we're rotating.
The question I have, I've been a youth pastor for the last 11 years, and I had a dad that walked out when I was 1, but then I had a dad that stepped into my life when I was 8, and he adopted me and my brother and changed our lives. And so I've dedicated my life to changing the lives of teenagers, but the purpose, the question I'd like for both of you to answer is, how impactful do you think it would be for your lives, as well as other dads, with this movement of dad? We live in a society of Burger King or a have it your way. And instead of telling people that they need to and taking them to show them how, how would that impact your guys as dads, to walk alongside someone and show them how? Would you guys be willing to take someone? It's great that you're doing being pastor dad at home. I love that. But also someone that's struggling with this that never.
So like a big brothers, big sisters type thing, but for dads?
Dad, to take a man and say, this is how to. We have the problem in churches and in society. Right. You need to do more.
Right.
But how would that impact your guys' life if you actually took someone and said, here is how to?
Well, if I'll jump in on that one. I think how it would impact our lives to do that is just like anything that he was talking about. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. I think something that we've definitely lost is men taking other men into their lives as a mentor type role, in a positive, healthy way. I mean, that's what Mark was to me, is that mentor type thing, and that can translate into parenting. That can translate into just being a better husband. That can translate into the business world. Translate into anything. And so, how would it affect me? I think I would get the result that I put into it, but I do think that's something that we've lost, are men who step up for other men and challenge them, to affirm them, and instead of, continuing to kind of put Band-Aids on each other's wounds and say, oh yeah, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, wasn't that awesome? Say, hey, you know what, that's not the way to handle that, or you handled that really well. I think that's something that we definitely need to see a lot more of, and we'd see a lot less of the damage being inflicted by guys who don't have that in their life. I mean, hurt people, and I think we could put a stop to that if we had more guys that would step up and be mentors. And sometimes, the roles, it doesn't have to be a 60-year-old guy mentoring a 20-year-old guy, because a lot of times the 60-year-old guys are just as bad as the 20-year-old guys. But guys that are farther along in their walk, whatever walk that might be, to say, hey, you know what, bub, come along and, let me try to help you out in your walk. So.
Awesome.
Thanks.
My question is for James. What resources did you use to try to change the way you have a relationship with your kids, not having your father there?
The first part of the question was what?
What resources have you used to try to be a father figure for your children with your dad not being there?
Resources. Well, talking with other dads, just friends, talking with friends on how they do things, not being afraid to ask the question, my wife plans everything in our family, and I feel less than. I feel like I'm just kind of one of the kids, kind of waddling along after I come home from tour, and then she'll treat me like one of the kids, and then this whole ball keeps rolling. It's like, how do I step up, and how do I plan something? Things, it's like starting at that level for me at times, and daring to fail is a huge thing for me, because failure, not one of my favorite things, but you have to do it to get anywhere, and to keep telling myself it's okay to do that. The effort is a big part of it. Showing up, very important. If you're learning, and I'm continuously learning on how to do that. And the last question was, revolved around that, and who in your life is a mentor, and whether it's a stepdad, it's an uncle, it's a grandfather, it's a friend of the family, just men in general, knowing or having the awareness that they have that ability, and they do have. They are reflecting, or they're giving how to be a man, whether they know it or not. And kids are soaking that up. And if you're more aware of it, you're more possibly able to put across some of the more positive things. And, without worrying about it too much, really just, being like, what I tell myself is I'm going to be the person that I want my daughter to marry.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I can do. I can show up that way, or my son, or here's how I want my son to act when he's married to his wife, things like that.
Hey, what's up? Good movie, thanks.
You're welcome.
Do you think, it's like a two-part question, the second part's really short. Do you think that the fury and aggression from the loss of a father ever goes away, or is it go away when you're writing, but then it's out when you're in front of people doing your thing? That's the first part.
Yeah, well, a gift has been given to me, and that is being able to create music. And without that, I'm not sure where I would be. I know there's a lot of, I was very fortunate to find my gift early on in my calling. That's not the only calling that I think I have, but that's one that has kept me out of jail, kept me out of, dying or killing myself or others, whoever. I think that has been a voice for me in my childhood, and obviously I've grown up in music, and the honesty that I put down onto the paper is being heard by people, and they identify with those giant question marks. When I go and I look at my lyrics, there's these big question marks and all these lyrics like why, how, and does it get better? Things like that. And identifying with the question can be as powerful as having someone tell you an answer. So music has certainly saved my lives. I've had many things. More than 9, more than my female cats in the house. But it's saved my life daily.
The other part is that I had a similar conversation with you a couple years ago, and you told me to make sure that I put it down on paper. Instead, I recorded a record, so could I give you that record because it's all about this conversation?
Maybe later.
There you go.
All right.
Good for you. Yeah, you can, yeah.
I love Q&As.
Yeah, that's you. Hey, I know that guy.
Yeah, so that's the record, just in case you ever...
All right.
Oh, guys.
All right.
Love it.
Good for you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Keep
good
rocking,
for you,
man. That's awesome.
Hi guys. All right. My attraction to the church, has always been to follow, my God and that spiritual connection that you always get. But the one recently that I've never felt before is to be a father and to be a husband, and more importantly, a man. And just being 19 years old, I seem to want it so much that I don't know where to grasp it. I don't know how to get it, And I just want to ask you guys, what would be your best advice if you can look back at yourself at 19 years old, and what would you say? What would be your advice that you can, give me about that?
As far as
being a husband, a father, and a man that is always growing and growing for the better.
what advice would we give to kind of help you along that road and stepping up into those roles?
That would work.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that I've got the question right. I think, I think the first thing that you need to do, really, before you can step into those roles for anybody else, is you have to know who you are. And you have to take the time to figure out who you are and who that true self is for you. Because you can't step into the role for somebody else until you can handle that role for yourself. And I think that's one of the big problems that we see is a lot of people, especially guys, they're trying to be something for somebody else and they don't even know who they are. And that's a big problem, is when you don't know who you are, you base yourself on everybody else around you, which is why we go to great lengths to make people think certain things about us. And so what I would do is I would spend a lot of time with you. You're 19 years old?
Yes.
Then you need to spend some time figuring out who you are. And once you figure that out, then you'll know for a fact that you'll be ready to have a wife and to be a father. I hope that helped.
Yeah,
I hope that
there's
helped.
no hurry to rush into being a father. I mean, you're a kid still,
Yeah.
Be a kid and grow and
Yep.
experience life. Go screw up and learn from it,
Yeah.
And show up and check that off. Go, well, that didn't work. It's not easy. It's not easy. None of this is easy. It's not. It's going to take some work and some failure and some getting back up, falling down, getting back up again. But everyone's going through that, and you're not
Right.
alone.
That's what's important, that I think both of us are trying to say is it's not easy, but you're not the only person it's not easy for. It's hard for everybody, but once you figure out who you are, then you'll be much more apt to be able to step into the role and be that for somebody else. So.
But it is there. It is in you. And looking everywhere outside for it is
Right.
part of the adventure, but it lives within you already, and it's been placed there by your higher power.
And who is around you is not who you are. That's another thing to keep in mind. You're not going to be what other people think you are. You're going to be what you are and what you think you are. So.
Hi. First of all, I want to just tell you, Justin, I'm very proud of you. I'm so glad you stepped out for the men, because I've been a woman, a single woman for a long time, and when my children were small, and I had to teach them, because I have a son and I had 3 daughters, and I had to teach my son how to play football, baseball, and get out there and wrestle with them and stuff. And I'm just so proud that you stepped up and to bring this out, because it's been a long time.
Thank you.
It's been a long time, and I'm very proud of you. And
Thank you.
And James, I just wanted to ask you, when did you decide that when you decided you wanted to change all that up, all that fear and all the scarring and all the wounds that were inside of you? Was it after the book, or was it before the book that you had, that you guys had written?
Which book are you talking about?
Okay. It was about when you stopped, when you went into rehab and
Right.
in the band, you guys kind of swayed away from each other, and
Yeah, the monster movie. That's what
Yeah.
it's called. Some kind of monster. Yeah. It's daily. It's every day I make that decision. And I know when I wake up at the end of my bed, there is another part of me that says, "Ha, you're awake. Let's go screw up." And let's go mess up whatever good things you have in your life.
Yeah.
And I know that voice, I know that thing, and I say, no, not today. Just for today, I choose to do the next right thing. I'm going to show up for my family, show up for myself, do what is, on the menu for me, to help to be part of the solution, not this problem. And this is a huge part of it. This is really helping me become what potential I think that I do have. And so it is daily, but certainly hitting a bottom and going into rehab was, a bottom can really do a lot of good things for a person. It certainly doesn't feel good, but it was what it took for me to wake me up and say, look at all this great thing, all these great things you have and you're not paying attention to. So for me, a gratitude list every day is really powerful.
it's funny because when I did the turnaround and I was reading the book and everything, I was like telling my new husband, I was like, wow, check this out. James Hatfield's changed, and so are we. Yay! And it was I just want to say I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the change that you've done, and you basically, just showed a lot of people that it can be done if you decide that in your mind and heart, and God helps you out. And
Well, thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Yes, thank you so much. And God bless you for stepping up for your children and doing both roles.
Yeah.
It's very commendable, extremely.
Hi, James. My name's Gina, and I have a question for you and Justin. Justin, first of all, I thought it was a great movie.
Thank you.
It actually brought up a little bit of an anger because my first son, 17, his name is Austin. Big fan of you, by the way, James. And last year he lost his biological father to cancer. His biological father never took the time to get to know him, lived in the same city, didn't get to call him, not once a note. So I had a lot of anger when he died just because he didn't get to know him at all. So what would you do? What would you say to a 17-year-old who has his whole life ahead of him, But he has a stepfather now that's in his life. But I think that deep inside, where the biological father that he knew was there, supporting him with child support, but did not take the time to get to know him, is very powerful.
Right.
And still breaking up wounds.
The first thing that you say to a 17-year-old who had a father like that is you tell him that it's not your fault. I think that's something that a lot of teenagers would probably wonder, what did I do to make that happen? And it's not his fault. I think that's going to be a big part of his healing and dealing with that, is understanding that it's not his fault that happened. And the other thing is to tell him that it can change with you. You can turn things around. You can get past the fact that, it's not your fault, and you can turn your life around and plug into your children and not be that.
Yeah, the gratitude list is certainly a help in that department too. And at 17, I was certainly not grateful for anything that I had and didn't see it. And, in the fog of growing up, and that's pretty much what I remember of my childhood. It was like a big fog, and I needed help, people to guide me through that fog, and I had no idea that there were people at that time helping me till later. Your son has a stepfather now, and that's a great gift. And yeah, there are things that happen in life, and they affect people in many different ways. And for your son to carry the shame of his father it's not his. It is absolutely not his. And he can be proud to be who he is and go on in his life and possibly show his father that look what you missed out on. Look what you missed, And yeah, that moves me a lot. It moves me that that someone could not want to call their child is unbelievable to me. It's tough to hear, but it does happen, and we don't know all the circumstances. And but carrying that shame does him no good. It's baggage that's not his. His name is not on it. Leave it at the station and continue on.
I think you just made it just coming from you. I think you heard that. I think it made it all better. And is there going to be a sequel?
Oh. I don't know. I don't know.
What, absenter?
Absenter. More absent.
Or no longer absent?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just some ideas.
Really, really absent.
First, I'd like to say amazing job on the film.
Thank you.
James, I think it's very noble of you to lend such a powerful voice to such a powerful cause for a lot of kids out there, dads, this whole situation that's going on. I think that's truly amazing.
Thank you.
I've looked up to you since I was in 7th grade and was just blown away when I saw the first preview of what was happening tonight. And just thank you very much for that. Also, the other question I have is, after seeing Some Kind of Monster and looking at like Lars's relationship with his father, I understand he has kids too. Do you guys bounce things off each other as brothers, bandmates? You guys are like family. So I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of
it's worse than family.
Yeah.
All right. We're married. There's no doubt about that. It's a great question, and yes, we do. Especially after like a couple months away from each other, which is always good, and you get back together and you say, "Oh my God, this is happening, and can you believe my son is doing this and that?" It's like, "You too? Oh man!" And we're sharing these stories, and well, here's what I did, and then he tells me something, and it's such a different relationship at this point. And yeah, you mentioned the Some Kind of Monster movie, and we're bickering like I want a divorce, it was, you brought up the D word, oh my God, I can't, it was so heated, there was so much passion there, but a lot of it was driven by fear, and we knew deep down that we loved each other so much that nothing was going to tear us apart, even the worst kind of fight that was going on right then, or him screaming the F word in my face, okay, you get it out, and now the relationship is unbelievable. And we are able to treat each other like brothers. Yeah.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Thanks, man.
My question is for James.
Hello.
I personally didn't have my dad emotionally. He wasn't there. So my question to you is, what got you through that personally for you through growing up?
Well, music for sure. Yeah, father left at 13, as you know in the movie. It was a really tough time to understand all of that. You know, okay, when my mom finally said that, you know, your father has left, he's no longer on the month-long business trip that we thought he was on, and come to the realization that he wasn't coming back. Just numbness, pretty much. Got really numb and didn't want to talk to anybody. I felt very alone. I felt that music spoke for me. So I was able to get in there and really just get lost in it. And it was an escape for me. Turned out to be a career, which is a positive of that. But, you know, just trying to run away from it. And the drinking started, and then that path, they kind of ran similar, they can't parallel next to each other. And really, you know, up till 10 years ago, I thought drinking was really good for me. And life is unbelievably great at this point, and every decade is getting better. But music did, friends helped a lot, more than I knew. I think what would have helped me more is maybe more experience with talking about my feelings, because there wasn't a lot of that allowed in the house, unless it was really good, you know. But anything that was negative or fearful or scary wasn't really mentioned in the house. It's really important, I think, to tell my kids that they can talk about anything at any time, when they're compelled to talk about it. And I think honesty and freedom in the house is pretty important.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
This question is for both of you. What would you suggest if you have someone who's got a father who was absent, though present, mostly because of alcohol abuse? And James, what you said in one part of the movie where you're talking about trying to reconnect with your dad, and it was very surfacey. I can totally relate to that. And I feel like I've tried in a lot of different ways. Should I just give up and accept that it's never going to be what I'm looking for? Or is there a way, you know? Any thoughts on that?
So you're talking about you and your relationship with your father? Yeah. Well, you can show up. You can show up and be the you that you feel you need to be, and not change yourself for him. It's him missing out on the good things that you have to offer, and him, you know, you showing up in his life is a gift that he doesn't recognize, possibly. You know, I know a lot of people through the program that are in the fog that still don't quite get it. And there's a lot of good people in their lives, and you can do what you can do, and that's it. You know, you're showing up with your part, and that's what you can feel good about. And you know, you can't really change people. You can lead them by example.
Well, and the other thing too to realize is just because he's your dad and he's older doesn't mean that he hasn't lost all sense of fear. I mean, he might be the one that's fearful in that relationship, and you might have to be the one that takes the initiative. And if it doesn't work the first time, I mean, if it's that important to you to maintain or at least to regenerate that relationship, at least you can go to sleep at night knowing that you've tried, and you'll continue to try until it either happens or it doesn't. But you can keep trying, and he might be the one that's fearful, and you might have to be the one that steps into the parenting role, honestly. So we'll go for about another 15 minutes, if that's okay with you? Yeah. Okay.
Hey James, thanks for coming to town. My question is, in your music, there's a lot of raw emotion that obviously has to deal with your father and mother, in particular Dyer's Eve and God That Failed. I'm just wondering, when you wrote those songs, do you still feel that same way to some degree? And at what point, if you were at all able to forgive your parents, and how have you moved on from that?
Yeah, there's some moving on that has happened, and you know, like a few other questions before, just the blame game of, you know, that does me no good. It really doesn't. I think finding out where your wounds come from is important. Okay, this happened in my life, this traumatic thing happened in my life, and now I identify them. These are things that I possibly don't want to do to my children, and also not hanging on to, this is why I am who I am. That's not helping anyone, the person you're blaming, and especially yourself. And me being able to come to peace with that and forgive, they did their best. And I wish I could ask them directly, and I have many times in my prayers, and I think they have answered me, and they show up in my lives in many different ways that I feel a lot more open to. But moving on, for sure, from those. But just like anything, that is a historic marker in my life. And the song is exactly what it is, and it helped me at that moment in life. And if possibly someone else gets helped from that moment at that time, and they identify with that song, then it's done its job again.
Hi, James. I'm a huge fan. My question is to you, what made you more nervous? Starting Metallica or becoming a father?
That's cute.
Right. Hi, huge fan. What's your name?
Chris.
Chris, all right. Starting Metallica, I was not afraid of that whatsoever. That was a necessity. I was tired of working at the sticker factory, all right? And I wanted to get out of there and not have to work for a living, basically. And getting married and becoming a father were 2 points in my life that I don't realize how important they were at the time. I do now. You know, me and my wife first got married, we've renewed our vows since after rehab, and had a lot more meaning to them this time, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, and writing our own vows and making it really, really about us and our bond and our partnership in life. Being there for my children being born, even when my wife and I were going through these tough times, I was so adamant about being there for my children's birth. It was so important. You know, all cutting the cord and all of that, being as close to them as I possibly could. The one thing that I really hang on to is my boy. You know, when my boy Castor, when he came out, I mean, it was just a big patch of blonde hair coming out, going, oh my God. And he pops out and he turns and he opens his eyes and looks right at me. I was like, whoa, okay. You know, all the others were all wrinkly and crying. Now he just came out and went, like, oh man, okay. He's going to be watching me, make sure I'm a good dad. But I just felt such a power at that point. Like, oh my God, I feel so important. He's the first person he's seen. Or I'm the first person he's seen. How important is that? And how special is that? So becoming a father, it's impossible to explain. You have to live it when it's your time.
Before the president's speech on Libya, did you know he had a secret meeting? A man who was surprised to be invited talks to us next.
Then, a Metallica frontman tells a dark story from his past and why it's become a focus of a new movie. Singer James Hetfield will be here live. Please wake up. I can't keep shaking you. Now let me tell you what's happening in the news. Massachusetts Congressman Bill Keating learns a tough lesson. His Lexus was stolen after he left it unlocked with the keys inside. I do that all the time. Police caught the two brothers who stole the car when they stopped at McDonald's. And a woman in the Florida Keys gets tackled by a 300-pound stingray. It jumped onto a boat and wouldn't get off. Wildlife crews finally pried the ray off. Both were unharmed. We'll follow that story every day.
Meanwhile, a new documentary delves into the crippling emotional scars left behind by absentee and emotionally unavailable fathers. And one heavy metal rocker had first-hand experience.
He left without saying goodbye. He left a note. He left a note. And it wasn't even to me. I wasn't the man. I wasn't taught to step up.
Well, Metallica frontman James Hetfield's father left when he was 13. He was one of the many telling his story in a new documentary called Absent.
And he joins us now from San Francisco along with the filmmaker Justin Hunt. Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning.
James, how did you decide that you wanted to be a part of this? It's such a personal story and I imagine painful.
Well, me going through lots of painful things in my life and having to deal with them as it's not it's something that I've learned that it's part of being that warrior and stepping up in my life and taking responsibility for myself and you know, going through rehab and a few other things. I've become a lot more comfortable in telling my story, and it's also healing for me.
And Justin, you included his story about losing his father, and he also lost his mom 3 months, rather 3 years later. Why did you decide to make a documentary about absent dads?
You know, there's a couple of things that came into play. One was just conversations with men that were like mentors in my life, basically other father figures. Another was having read the book Wild at Heart, which John Eldridge is the author and plays a huge role in the film. And then I'm a single father myself of 2 kids, and you know, just seeing how pivotal that role is and how important it is, and needing guys to step up into that role wasn't something that was really being portrayed all that often.
Sure.
So I thought it was a good topic to take on.
James, what do you say to people watching right now and say, hey, you know, you're a big success now. That was a long time ago. You should be over it. Are you over it?
Well, there is a father wound that you never really recover from. You can change the past by not recreating it, and that's what I think we're here to state, is that as a man you can show up for your kids' lives, especially having a young son, being able to talk with him and say, you know, I don't know how to do this. You know, he can ask me questions and I'll be comfortable saying, I don't know. Let's find out together. I don't have to pretend like I'm the father and I know everything about it. You know, this is an adventure for me, and I'm able to go back in my father's footsteps and his father and kind of figure out, you know, where the father wound is coming from and how he didn't know how to be a father because of where he came from. And I'm here to be the warrior and step up and say, you know, the lineage of that stops here. I'm going to do my best to be the best father I can be right now.
And we were seeing a picture of your beautiful family there with your children. My final question to either one of you is, why is this not talked about more? When you look at the statistics, there, unfortunately, are so many absent fathers, and it's affecting our entire society. Why is it not talked about more?
Justin?
Well, I think what really happens is, you know, we get the father wound, and then from that we make these vows, and we live the rest of our lives out of those vows. I think most people can probably take it back to the vow, but until we lift that veil and get people to understand why we make those vows, it's not something that we really recognize. You know, I think most people don't realize that our Father is the first person that either chooses us or doesn't. He's the first one in the outside world to do that. And we have questions for him, and when those aren't answered, we live the rest of our lives out of that. And I think it's time that we start kind of exploring that and seeing what we can do to change things.
He's in a heavy metal band, and he got up at 3:50 in the morning just to talk to you. That's not supposed to be what rock stars do, but that's how important this topic is. Justin and James, thanks so much. We'll make sure to check out the movie.
It's called
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. All right, straight ahead, before the president's big address on Libya a couple of nights ago, did you hear about his secret meeting? A guy who was shocked to be on the guest list? Bill Kristol. here next to talk about what they talked about.
Plus, word of another government shutdown. Again, Harry Reid says it'll be the Tea Party's fault if it happens. Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann reacts to that claim next out.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for buying the DVD of Absent. I'm Justin Hunt, the director, and I just wanted to introduce this very special bonus feature of the DVD that revolves around the screening that we did in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was the initial screening of the film, and here's the story behind this event that you're about to see. We kind of pick it up a little late in the story. My music supervisor and manager and great friend Michael Davenport, among all his talents, videography is not one of them. But I was a little busy at the time, and so Dav was shooting this, and this is, I'm going to take you up to where it starts, and then you'll see what happens from there. But long story short, is we had a screening planned for a Saturday in August of 2010, and Johnny Tapia, who you saw in the film, was scheduled to be at that screening. Now Johnny, being Johnny, I love him to death, but he is hard to rope in sometimes and to get corralled. And it was getting close to the screening, and we'd not really heard anything yet, and I was getting a little nervous, and so I tried him on Monday and nothing, Tuesday nothing. I went to Albuquerque on Wednesday, still nothing. So finally on Thursday morning, I'm starting to get very nervous because we've been promoting the fact that he's going to be there. The place that was doing the screening had been promoting the fact that he was going to be there, and he's a hero to the people of New Mexico, which is amazing, and he should be. But when you promise something and people don't show up, it doesn't go over very well. So I was starting to get a little nervous. So anyways, here's what happens. On Thursday morning, I get a phone call from his wonderful wife, Teresa, who is also his manager, and she tells me this story. She tells me that Johnny and another gentleman by the name of Jerry Padilla had sparked up a conversation about 6 weeks prior to the screening, and through that conversation, they started to find some similarities. They explored those similarities, and on that Thursday, before the screening, a very unique conclusion was reached in some of these similarities and where they came from. So we're going to leave it there for now, and I'll take you to a Q&A session in Albuquerque, New Mexico in August of 2010, and the introduction of Johnny Tapia after the initial screening of Absent. Enjoy the Q&A, and then I will talk to you on the other side of it. And very grateful to be able to introduce to you for the first time in the history of this planet, Jerry Padilla. This is Johnny Tapia's father. I think this is something that is a blessing, obviously a surprise, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to do a quick Q&A. There's one more person I'd like to bring up as well. Robin, are you here? She's right here. Robin Decker, everyone, come on up here with us. Come on up here with us, Robin. Mr. Padilla, let's do this chair where we can sit by you. All right. So, there we go. So I don't know if do we have another mic? There we go. So we'll open it up to some Q&A. We really love to try to keep it about the film, but Johnny's here, Jerry's here, Robin's here, we're all here. Lance and Abby are here, and I tell you, they have no shortage of words to say. So with that, let's open it up. Anyone have any questions about the film? Yes?
What inspired you to do this documentary?
You know, there's a couple of things that played a role in that. One is just some of the things that I've gone through in my life, and some of the people that were in my life, mentors that I had, men that were around me, conversations that we had about it, books that I had read, including Wild at Heart, I'm a single father as well, and so I just felt like it was time to handle the issue. American meth was kind of a tough act to follow, and I wasn't exactly sure how we were going to do that. But I think that this was a topic that needed to be touched on, and those things all kind of came together, and I decided actually 3 years ago today to do this project. So, yes.
In the documentary, I thought it said that Johnny, your father, was shot and killed when you were a child. So this is a revelation.
Let me tell you something. Coming into this world, I guess my mother was selfish. They told me that my father was dead. Then they said my father was a drummer player and died. I found out 6 weeks ago. I knew this man for years. I know the Padilla family, such beautiful people. I was on the other side of Tapia family, and he kept on explaining, I need to speak something with you. I was with your mother in 1966. And I started thinking, he says, we had a very good connection. And I looked at him, what kind of connection? I said, really, what kind of connection did you have? So I went outside, he told my wife first, because he didn't know how I was going to act. And I looked at him, and we looked at each other, checked each other's bodies, and looked at each other's lids and face. He says, you have Baca on you? And I said, no, I got Tapia. He says, no, you got Baca on you? I said, no, I got Tapia. So he says, he said the story, they met with each other. And I said, I've been looking for my father for years. He said he was dead. I would love to have a father, I'm sorry. So we took a DNA test and went to the lab. Thursday, my wife calls him over to the house and said, we're not going to open it up until you get here. I'm still sleeping, I don't get up in the morning. I got up. And it said, these are the results. 90.9.7, you are the father. The truth is, it was unreal to watch your story and the touching basis of it, but I got 5 other brothers too, and I also got one sister that I know. All of them, we've known each other from the streets, Padillas and the Tapias, and I'm going to tell you guys something straight from the heart. I'm glad and I'm happy I have my father. I love my father. Don't know much about my father, but I'm going to get used to him. I'm going to get used to my family. And they say you ride with the horses up in the sky, and that's what I want to do. I really appreciate you guys coming out today, and I'm thankful and grateful. I'm also fighting September 24th for my 7th world title. So not too many people can come back at 43 and do this, but I already know I'm going to get a black eye and a paycheck, so I'll be all right.
Way in the back, yes.
This is such a beautiful film, and it has such power and insight into the pain that so many people feel in this world. Are you going to be able to get this movie into churches, prisons, jails, all the places where people are hurting, that perhaps they can begin to see that there is a source where they can get healing?
Yes, ma'am. The question was, are we going to be able to get this into the churches and prisons and the places where it's needed the most? And the answer to that is yes. Obviously, we made this to create a message, but also there's a commercial side to it as well. And we're ready to take that step towards distribution on the commercial side. But the other side of that is speaking at churches, which we've already begun the process of setting up screenings around the country, and speaking to prisons and groups. And as a matter of fact, got an email this morning about a public speaker who was a gentleman who played in the NFL for 13 years and wants to collaborate and start doing that. So I think, this is the first time anyone's seen the film. And so I think once it starts getting out and people start seeing the message and what we're trying to do, I think a lot of those collaborations and partnerships will start to crop up, and that's exactly what we want to do, is to work with those people and get the message out. So, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Would you like to say that it was a really good film, with a good education
thing I want to say from my heart, welcome them into our family.
That's fantastic. Yes, sir, in the back.
My wife asked the last question. I've got something to say too. I never knew my dad, and I had an absent father most of my life. So this, even though a lot of times my son did the music, this is powerful to me because it brings some of what I felt. And Johnny, I'm glad you're not your dad. I'm 60 years old, and to this day I wish I could find my real father. But I know it'll never happen. So this was.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing that as well. And Ash still did the music on that. Wonderful musician, and it's a great score, so thank you, Ash, for doing that too. Good job, buddy. Anyone else? This is your chance. Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I'd like to give a lot of thanks and praise to God for guiding me and protecting me. You know, it's a struggle when you don't have a father involved in your life. You know, I really miss my mom, and I really did miss my father. It's been a shock and a surprise for me, too, to find out that I have a father now. Where do I go from here? What do I do from here? All I want to say is for the people out there that are hurting without fathers is to keep your faith in God, and God works in mysterious ways. How this happened, we don't know. He's a sneaky man, but all I want to say is that I'm thankful for you guys to come out and support us, and just keep us in your prayers, and we appreciate it. Bye.
I'll ask you a question, actually. Robin, what was the process like for you, and just being able to sit down and get some of that stuff out and talk about that, and then seeing it on the screen? How did that help or hurt, or how was the experience for you? Is it turned on?
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay. For me, it was sitting down and talking with you was, well, when you asked me to be a part of this film, I was a little bit nervous at first because I haven't really talked about my issues very candidly in a long time, especially not out in the open. And I knew that it was going to be very emotionally trying for me, and I really kept my heart very guarded for a long time. So knowing that I was going to cry on camera was, that was pretty scary too. And also I know that there may be some backlash from the little bit of family that I have left for coming out with this, because when I got taken out of my mother's home right before Christmas, when I was 14, all the family had to say to me was, "Thanks for ruining Christmas." So, I know that there will probably be some backlash, but it's worth it to me. It's, I know that through sharing my pain and my experiences, I can help others, and I want everyone to know that there are people out there who really respect the importance of a father in their lives and in their children's lives. And I wish that I could have had a real father there. But you know, I have 4 beautiful children, and I think that I've turned out to be a really good person in spite of it. And I'm really happy to be a part of your movement here. And then with regard to sitting down with you and actually talking, that was easy. This man is like, it's probably one of the easiest men to talk to in the world. I mean, we're talking about a really difficult subject, and he just makes you feel very comfortable and secure. And so I appreciate you bringing that to the interview as well.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I have another question. Mr. Padilla, it was really interesting to sit with you guys, and you got to watch Johnny's story, and we knew what we knew, and you're seeing this. What was it like sitting with Johnny and watching that on the screen, knowing that, you know, when we did this movie, he didn't think that he had a father. And so for you to be able to sit there and know that you now have that relationship, what was that like for you?
First of all, I'm just it's an honor. This is an honor to be here today, and all these people. And first of all, I just want to give the glory and the honor to God for being so good to me in all my life, and having Johnny as a very, very special person in my life. I've always followed his career. My father read the newspaper, but every time that he would read the newspaper, he would tell me 2 or 3 times about it. It would never sink in my mind. But today I'm just totally blessed. I am so blessed being in my son's life, and I'm just totally blessed. And seeing the movie, it brought some things to my heart, and I hope that a lot of families or children or mothers or whatever is that they could find their parents or it's just an honor. But I want to give the glory and the honor to God for all this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Justin, what can you tell us about the process that you went through to identify the people that told the stories that made up your documentary?
Well, the thing about documentary filmmaking is, you know, I come from a news background, and when you make a documentary film, it's like you basically put your boat in the river and it's going to take you where it's going to take you. I can tell you honestly, though, the moment I decided to do this, the first thing I thought of was Johnny, and I thought of Johnny talking about losing his mother and his father, and then immediately cutting to a shot of him knocking the crap out of somebody. You know, that's a pretty big contrast in showing, you know, how a person fights out of that wound. But you know, just other people that came to mind. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say that you're probably not going to find a prostitute who had a good father figure. And so there's a group that I know I wanted to talk to. And I know that that's a big struggle with inner city high school kids, which is why I went to Miami to talk to them. And, you know, and then I was lucky enough to meet Robin and get her in the film, and what a touching story she has. I mean, she's a warrior. She's come through a lot and continues to succeed and improve as a person. And then, you know, the James Hetfield thing. Metallica has probably been my best friend for the past 25 years. Honest to goodness. And so it's just weird how that worked out, but I knew James's story, and, you know, God bless Facebook, because that's how I got James Hetfield. Was a girl I went to high school with in Bloomfield, New Mexico. Go Bobcats. Daryl's here. She is an opera singer in San Francisco, and that's how I met James Hetfield. And so just things like that, they fall into place. You know, I'm a lot like Johnny. I mean, this is a God thing, and he took care of some things for us and made it happen. But it's just amazing how those things unfold. You know, like this on Thursday before we screen today, unbelievable. So that's how they kind of, some were set that I knew I wanted to do, and some just, you know, gave themselves to us. So yes.
Maybe you'll do another documentary on where the children are split all the time.
Might do that. Yeah, might do that. So. Anyone else? Oh, yes, sorry.
I had a question for Robin, and I was curious to know if her father was ever punished, and if there is a relationship between her and her father today, and if have you forgiven his father, or how do you feel in that regards?
That's an excellent question, thank you. No, my father's never been punished because I know he should be. You know, when I was 14, I was already a mom, and I was so heartbroken by my family's reaction when they heard the news. I didn't feel like I had any support in bringing charges against him. And for some reason, CYFD didn't actually pursue it. To this day, I cannot figure out why. That was the last day that I ever saw my father. And before my mother passed away, she told me that he used to ask her every couple of years. He would just call her up and say, hey, how's Robin doing? But he never made any attempt to apologize to me, make right for anything that he had done wrong. And I thought that it was best for me, especially I was already a mother, to just not have any contact with him. These days I want to just go knocking on his door and tell him exactly what I think of him. So if he never goes to jail, at least he'll live with that.
Would you have been different?
Would I have been different?
Would you have been different if given the chance right now?
Oh, I think I would have. I think I would have. I would have put him away because, you know, he wasn't just sexually abusive to me. He was emotionally and physically abusive to me and my mother and my brother. And, you know, I don't feel it's right to tell the details of what he's done to my brother, but it was pretty awful too. And I don't know if he's ever hurt anybody else. I would think that he's probably not the kind of person to, you know, he's not like a serial rapist or anything, but luckily he's never had any more kids. I think that he probably is the type to just prey on, you know, those who are closest to him in his home. He can make victims. I would put him away, at the very least. Can you help? Maybe I should put him in the boxing ring.
Any others? Yes.
I just want to thank you for doing this film. I know it's very easy to kind of bury your past, and I just wanted to thank you too, Johnny and Robin, for addressing, you know, your demons, because all too often people just find it's just easier just to suppress those emotions and never really get a chance to, well, say it at all. I mean, the fact that you guys said it on camera and let it all out there, I really admire you too for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Has Mr. Baca always been a part of Johnny's life? You made a reference.
Mr. Padilla?
Mr. Padilla, I'm sorry.
No, that's a very good question. I have followed the boxing arena all my life, but I did not, you know, but 6 weeks ago, I got involved with Teresa and with Johnny, and we just started getting closer, and I just kept upon seeing a lot of resemblance in him and my other son. And it was just, I was just like, keep saying like, man, this is just like too different for two persons to do the identical, the same thing. So I was just thinking of a time, and so Saturday, myself and Johnny, we went to Sandia Crest on a horse ride, and it was just a blessing. But to answer your question, I had not been thought about it, and I had never been, you know. But I'm just totally blessed today. Thank you for your question.
Only 43 years right there. Also, I'd like to thank Teresa too. I can't tell you how helpful she's been, and the entire team Tapia, but Teresa has really been helpful. And we've got together 3 or 4 times and planned on getting together 5 or 6 times, and it didn't work out. But you have been so gracious in helping us out, and I really appreciate that. So, one thing I'd like everyone to know is that Abby here was paid union scale for the bike scene. She got a toy after. Can I ask you a question? Okay. Tell us what that was like for you when we did the bike scene.
Well, it was really hard because I used to, at the beginning, I didn't know how to ride on 2 wheels.
Was that the first time you had done 2 wheels?
Yeah.
Was it hard without any help?
Yeah. scary.
Did it hurt when you fell?
A lot.
And what were you thinking when you fell and you looked for your dad to help you and he was just standing there pointing a camera at you?
I was kind of mad at you.
You were kind of mad? How'd you feel when we went to Walmart and you left with a big toy?
Very happy.
That's better. Yeah. What about you, bud? How was it? Because Lance was there when we were shooting that. He was helping in a lot of different ways. What was that like for you watching her do that?
Well, I just thought it just made me so sad. Like, I would never let my sister do this. Like, if my dad was never there, I would be like a second dad because I love my sister with all my heart.
We didn't even practice that. That's amazing. You're not supposed to make dad cry in public. Wow. Well, both of you did a really good job. So, can we just one more real quick for these guys? Lance is 9 and Abby is 7. Yeah, pretty good kids. And adorable. Nah, they're all right. Yes. Yes.
Well, since we're kind of on that theme, if you could, as much as you feel comfortable, sort of describe your influence in relationship with your father, who's here in the audience.
My relationship with both of my parents is very strong. They got divorced when I was 5. I went back and forth between them every 3 months until 8th grade. And then every 6 months. And then I stayed in high school in one place. But both of my parents have been extremely supportive and loving from the get-go. And I know that because it's a father movie, my dad's probably got a complex now because he thinks I'm making this because I had a bad father, but I didn't. And my mom was very loving and supportive. So it's almost like the meth issue. A lot of people ask me with American Meth, was I addicted to meth? And I wasn't. I just see the topic that needs to be handled and go after. But these are 2 of the greatest parents that anybody could ask for. So thanks for asking me. It doesn't look like I do meth? Well, that's good. That's a plus.
So there you have it, a very special, very monumental question and answer session in Albuquerque at the premiere screening of Absent. Now, in case any of you are confused, which you have every right to be, from what I understand, it was just that Johnny's mother had gotten pregnant and Jerry was the father, but Padillas and the Tapias didn't get along all that well, and so she chose not to let anyone know about it, and it turned into what it turned into. But the good part of the story is the fact that those 2 have been reconnected, and I have to tell you, it was an amazing experience sitting there with Johnny and Jerry watching this movie in front of 300 or 400 people in Albuquerque, and just going back and forth on, do we let them know, do we not, do we tell them, do we not? Jerry and Johnny were wanting to be very guarded about it, and understandably so. But it was a great time, and they're great guys, and I think they were glad that they let the world know, and I was really honored to be the one to tell it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed Davenport's videography skills, and I hope you enjoyed everyone else that was on the panel, including Lance and Abby, my 2 special associates. So I appreciate you buying the DVD of Absent, and I hope you've enjoyed the film, the rest of the bonus features, and as always, I appreciate your support.